We're going to begin with our native land acknowledgement. Today, I would like to acknowledge the people whose land we are gathered on. Present-day Portland is located on the traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia and Willamette rivers. Let us also acknowledge the robust Native community made up of tribal diversity that originates from around the country and whose journeys have brought them to Portland by ways of forced displacement or seeking opportunities. Today, these same communities celebrate their heritage, showing resilience and tenacity that will be greatly admired by their ancestors. We also want to begin from the context of our mission as the David Douglas School District. Our mission at David Douglas is to provide meaningful, equitable, and highly effective instruction so that students grow and thrive socially, emotionally, and academically. Through supportive communities of learners, David Douglas staff will foster the whole child to be a force for positive change in the global society. That is why we are here. We are going to begin this evening with the report from our student body president, who is here with us tonight, Ms. Dora Hussein.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
For what I have to share today, we, Student Council, had the privilege of Ken Richardson, our superintendent, and Donna Barber, our board chair member, come and acknowledge and educate us about the bond measure that they're definitely not promoting. And we, as Student Council, have yet to go forward with anything impactful yet, but I am positive and I'm very sure that we are hoping to make a video to support our bond, to make impactful changes to our school. Thank you.
I just have to say the privilege was ours. I know I can speak for Donna as well. The privilege was ours. It was fun. So I look forward to doing it again for any and all topics that we can. So thank you for providing the time. It was fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And we always invite you to stay and to participate. But we also understand if you need to step out, it's fine.
Dora, do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I'm just, I promise it's not loaded, but I'm just curious if you were at the homecoming dance.
I was at the homecoming dance.
I heard there was, 741 or something. Just kind of any report on homecoming? How did it go? How was it?
Homecoming was super exciting. We obviously do have a lot to improve on, just getting more students in, but we did make it 749 students in a very small gym. Very exciting. I know a lot of students really love the experience, especially me as a senior, and I know a lot of my senior friends enjoy that experience. And the homecoming game, which is also super exciting, that I know the band, cheerleaders, and football players also really enjoyed. All of our students coming to support them.
And first assembly in over 3 years. How did that go from your opinion? Hi.
Our first assembly of the year in, I don't know how long. But I would definitely say that our senior class president, Paris Tasinga, and I definitely killed it. That's just my personal opinion. And we had our LSU perform a dance, multiple dances, and share some words, which was such a great experience. And having a lot of students have their first assembly back, or even if they were freshmen, just their first assembly in general of their high school career, was definitely impactful for them, seeing like, wow, there are so many faces in this school, and there are so many people that I have yet to interact with.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, from what I understand, we do not have anyone for public comment tonight. Right, we do not. So we are moving forward with our Student Investment Account Annual Report from Pat Comar.
So in your packet, we had our annual report regarding our what we managed to succeed doing with our student investment account funds. These funds we utilized to reduce class size. We reinvested in elementary teachers and kindergarten instructional assistants, added instructional assistants to balance class sizes. This is elementary, added instructional assistants to support structured learning classrooms in our special ed, elementary and middle. We did some reinvestment in counseling, in our SUN programs. We added a comprehensive mentor training program, and I could put Brooke on the spot to talk about that because that's been very successful. And we've also reinvested in elementary PE, middle school health, and our community sports and rec programs. Do you want to share anything about the parent educators?
Yeah, so with the student investment account, we were able to hire, we have a very successful new teacher mentor program, but we've never been able to do that for our instructional assistants in our buildings. And so we were able to hire 2 paraeducator mentors and professional learning coordinators, and they support all of our instructional assistants with professional learning, just making sure that we're onboarding them correctly, meeting any of their, just how's it going, their needs with coaching. We have leadership identified at every single school, and classified leadership come together and they help support events. I mean, this is very new, but we're hearing such positive feedback, and it's really exciting to see us be able to support our classified staff this way, and hopefully it will help with retention and leadership and just overall district culture.
And so part of the requirements for these funds is that we take time to get public input on the annual report.
So ultimately, you'll see in the agenda, Madam Chair, the report has no action item. It's really that we provide it, because as we provide it and go back to ODE as part of the accountability is they need to see in minutes that we reported this, we shared this information, and then also you'll see the next one, if there's no questions on the report that was provided to you, then the next part would be to ask, is there any public input specifically around this topic?
Is there public input around what we have heard tonight on this topic of our student investment account annual report? Going once, twice? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Pat. Then we are going to move forward with invited public input. And our first presenters tonight are from Cairo, Oregon. And so we are going to invite you to come up, I believe led by Mr. Maxwell Olwa. And if you come up to the table here. No. And you can introduce others with you as you go along. Mm-hmm.
My name is Maxwell Olwa. I'm the Space Program Manager at Cairo. Space is the program that works with K through 12 students. Maybe I should sit. So yeah, so the Space Program works with students from K through 12 in different schools here in Portland. We are in Reynolds School District, Beaverton, and Hillsborough, and we are serving over 200 students from Africa. I like calling them African students in diaspora. And with me, I have some parents, and I'll just give you an overview of Cairo, and then I will invite them to introduce themselves and and say something. Okay. So a little bit about our history. The Center for African Immigrants and Refugees organization is a statewide nonprofit organization that engages and educates and empowers African immigrant and refugees communities, and with the hope to inspire them to rise above their circumstances. Cairo was founded in 2014 in response to the widening achievement gaps for the African school-aged children in Oregon, and was incorporated in the beginning of 2016. Our mission is to advocate for, the next slide please, and increase equity and social justice through our programs and services. And our vision is to have a more just and equitable society in which children, youth, and families live in sustained, supportive communities, which also reinforces the cultural wealth and lived experiences of our families. I'll just go really quick to our values and principles that are unbreakable resilience, social sustainability, cultural wealth, we are community-driven, and our collective responsibilities. And space program that I'll go back to that. Our strategic priority areas are equitable education, community health, and economic development. So the space program is under equitable education. And we have a preschool here in David Douglas. Unfortunately, we don't have space program that can continue working with the students once they leave the preschool. So we have the health and wellness project within space program, STEM, science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics program, which is designed to address particular challenges our students face in hard sciences. And we recognize extracurriculum learning opportunities to make our students and families more comfortable with those subjects, as well as encouraging them to continue with higher education and pursue all those fields that minority students don't usually pursue. So we have our space agents who are based in school. They are visible within the schools. They offer student support and mentoring, which is tailored to the needs of African immigrants' children within the schools. They do community-based support and parent engagement. So we do home visits, engage parents in advocacy for their children, and as well as being within the schools as cultural representation. We've seen how children see people that they can identify with, people who look like them, and they can approach us with issues that they have, and we can inform the teachers as well. So we bridge that gap between the schools and parents and the students. We have also a program that is, I should mention, the social support program, which deals with mental health, and psychosocial aspect of our students. And we have staff who are from the community, they live within the community, and they are trusted by the community. Those are some of the projects that we have under Space. Entrepreneurship project, African Tradition, Art and Cultural Immersion Project, where we teach K to 12 students to learn the language, read and write in their language. I wish if you look at our website, you can find some videos that of students who are very excited to learn their language, and I think it has increased their confidence and encouraged them to embrace their culture. We also have the tobacco prevention program that is under Cairo's community health program. Next slide. What are some of the impacts? We have seen improved school attendance, improved grades, decrease in discipline incidences and expulsion. Students and families have been feeling that they belong and they have a voice. Students are reoriented towards success and expressing their needs and concerns, and many other areas that we see our students embracing education. And so I wanted to invite one of the parents to come and tell us why they are here and why they have been asking us that we need this program in David Douglas School District. Can I have one of you? Oh, our interpreter just left to take one of the kids back home, and so maybe if she can come back, we can give them an opportunity to talk as well. Thank you very much.
I'm with an East Portland group called East Portland Action Plan, and we have a culture and language subcommittee. And it just so happened on Tuesday in our meeting, there were several members of the Somali Oregon's Service Center, which is right in our district and works with many of the families in our district. I noticed on your list of community organizations, you didn't include that. And so I'm wondering if you're reaching out to our local Somali groups, and there's about 10 of them that have banded together to work with youth to keep them out of trouble. And so it seems like a natural fit with what you're doing. And it would get you within the community with leaders in the David Douglas community. Well, it shows here that they have partners with many community organizations. Yes. And this is, if they're wanting to come into Douglas, it seems like if there's already an African, because it's a Somali group, already organized and reaching out to the Somali community, they would be a natural fit with them.
Yeah, and I would like to say that, you know, we believe that it takes a village to train a child, and so we embrace those partnership. And I think the next slide shows just a few partners that we have that we work together. So they may be African-based or community-based organizations that we work with. That list is not even exhaustive.
I'm just wondering, where do you get your funding? Like how do you fund the program?
So we are funded by the Black Student Success Act funding with the ODE. And then we also have other partners, OCF, OHA, and many other organizations
Oh, thank
Miller
you.
Foundation. Yes.
So yeah, thank you. The space agents that go into the schools, are they mostly paid individuals or volunteers, or maybe a combination of the two?
They are paid individuals and they work full time, 40 hours a week.
Very cool. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming today. And I think, I don't know what the next steps are, but what would it take? This is more a question maybe for Ken. What does it take to become an official partner with our district, and what does that take? Like, what are the steps for that?
Yeah. So we would set up a meeting to have a conversation, right? We'd sit down and talk about what resources are available, how you've worked in other schools, maybe what needs. We'd probably go through Kelly and Tay's department, thinking about our equity department, thinking about IDA and the cultural partners through Sun Schools, just seeing if there's a fit and connection. And then that's kind of the initial. And then after that, there's conversations around MOUs and kind of the official side. So the initial is a conversation about what's it look like. Is there a good partnership? Is there a way to make it work? And then the second would be the official side, would be the MOUs, making sure we go through all the safety processes, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah.
As I understand it, Cairo has an office in our district. Is that correct? Like besides the preschool, you have an actual office in our district? Okay,
Yes.
so Somali Oregon Service Center and Cairo both do. I would love to know if Somali Oregon Service Center also has a partnership with the district, or was this just we do this on our own in the community? Because I think what I'd love to see are as many partnerships as possible, particularly as it pertains to our equity plan and, trying to see kids with people who look like them and their experiences in schools. So it would be worth, I think, a look at. Some of them may be contracts, but some of them just may be a matter of an MOU if folks are just needing to be in the buildings, right? If they're already funded elsewhere, they may have something to offer for us for free. Not that it's free. It is, an amazing piece of work that you're doing in the community. So I would just love to know where everybody fits, because I know about Sun, right? I know about what we do with those contracts, but would love to just get a sense of what other communities are here wanting to support our students. And I'm excited to hear from the parents when the interpreter comes back.
Yeah, and I wanted to make a clarification. So we don't just work with Somali students. We work with all African immigrant students. And if you look at the list of students who have registered into who are registered in our program, some of them are from the Middle East, and some of them are African American students, Congo, and in the Cairo staff we have over 23 languages that are spoken just in our organization.
And if I understood you correctly, you said we already have the preschool program, so this would be an expansion of the partnership, not adding a new partnership, but expanding it, because right now, from what I understood, it's just serving preschool. And then what happens to those kids when they finish preschool and go into elementary school? Does the space program that you mentioned, for instance, does that start at kindergarten?
Yeah, so the space program, we help recruit students into the preschool. And so, but we primarily work with K-12 students. Yeah.
Right. So then
In
that
Douglas?
would allow,
Sorry.
I was just going to say, so then that would allow kids who are in the current program that we already have in the district that that Cairo is leading, to then continue on up through 12th grade if possible.
Yes, and I think before COVID, we were looking at doing a survey on the students who went through Cairo Academy, just to kind of, see how they're doing, how they getting into the mainstream schools. But we haven't had that opportunity yet. We do research on our students and families to, assess needs. so that we can accordingly meet those needs.
Okay. Did you have another question, Lisa?
I just understand now that you're renting space from us for the preschool. So the partnership is really just transactional, like we're giving you space for money,
Yes.
and you're providing this for our families.
That is the
Okay.
difference. We have 2 preschool classes in Portland School District, PPS, and Beaverton, but we are not paying. It's only in David Douglas that we pay for the preschool. And Hillsborough has been really asking us to start a preschool there, because they know the importance of having that culturally specific preschool.
Okay, any other questions?
Not really a question, but I just want to say that I feel like this makes a lot of sense. Like, there's so many students in this district that would have beyond use for this program and for this organization, because we do need as many programs, because not everything is going to fit one student, right? We need, like you said, like a village of folks, like a community of folks to support our students. And so to me, this makes sense, which is why I directly was like, yeah, let's see what it takes to become a partner, because it really, to me, just sounds like the next step, right? And I know for a fact so many students would really be seen by this organization and having you all here.
I'm wondering about contracts that we had for summer programming, because I feel like we struggled really hard to find community partners this last summer. Did you see those or apply for any of those opportunities in our district for this summer in David Douglas?
No, we got a funding from the state. I think it was under the summer program funding. Oh. And we had really amazing summer program for our students. We even had like a family camp out at the beach. We had some science projects that we did with Multnomah libraries, where students and families came together to learn about sciences. We do outdoor science projects. And we partner with the schools that we work with. They provide us with space to do that.
When you do, I understand your focus on culturally specific programming. Are you only working with Africans and African American families in your preschool and other programs, or is it? Do you offer, I'm thinking of in college, one of my best classes was through African arts, her culture and diaspora, and it really was, nothing I'd been exposed to before, and it really impacted my future. And I'm just wondering if you do just the culturally specific programming, or do you do intercultural work?
No, actually, that's a good question. We don't just, we are open to all students, because I believe that, for example, I was, supporting some newcomer students at Davis Elementary, and they were only speaking Swahili. And in the class, we made some posters with basic Swahili phrases, and the kids in that class, all of them learned some words in Swahili that they could use with these newcomers, so they can feel comfortable and welcome. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think that we are open, and our program is open to other immigrant students. Like I said, we have students from Middle East in our program, and other other countries.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I know that time-wise we are ahead of schedule, so
Our
what will...
interpreter is here too. So.
Oh, shit. Oh, good. Okay. Great.
So Easter is the space program supervisor. She works closely with the space agents or
Okay.
cultural navigators.
I think I'm loud enough without the microphone, but
But so that people who are watching online can hear you.
oh, that makes sense. But like a lot of our students, when they come in with their friends, and so we also serve their friends as well. That's something I wanted to add to what he was saying.
You can introduce the ladies and then have them.
Bring them.
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to have some of our David Douglas parents that would like to testify for and would like to talk about why they need the Cairo help. And Dakhaya is one of them. Okay. ما أنا بروفيسورة. أنا بروفيسورة. إيه؟ أنا بروفيسورة هاي عادي. حاولتني. هاي حاولت لا كان. هاي دبلومة. هاي لا حاولت لا كان. She's very shy. Okay, this is Sulekha. She's one of the parents at David. One of her students go to David Douglas. in صوبت قربت Cairo in أنتم ماضي.
I need you to get closer to the microphone, please.
أنا بروفيسور. أنا فكري سواك سدايتك أركاي.
No. Cairo maxay intuu imaada camal?
Yeah, so دوا so camera ذاك وقبت.
Fiiri inay intuu imaadaan ciyaalka inay caawiyaan more help camal.
Alright, she would like, I would like Cairo to be here so that they can help the students.
Maxaa kale?
ilmaha maxaa laga caawinaa?
Ilmaha homework in laga caawiyo.
To help with homework?
Schoolka.
After school program, to help with the after school program.
I'm done.
أي بس يا. This is Mama Fatima Abdi. I would like to say hi to everybody.
Thank you. Horta ilmahayaga maasha Allah. Ani hadda saddex gabdhood baa aniga qalin jabiyey.
I have, first of all, I would like to say mashallah is a praise, basically. I had 3 children graduate from David Douglas High School.
Yeah, middle school dadkii wuxuu dhigayay soo caawiyey meesha way fadhiyaan waa kan.
And some of the staff that helped them, that helped my kids from middle school are here today.
Yeah, muhiimka horta aan maanta u imideen aanu ka hadlayaa maadaama aan hooyahay.
The importance I came here for today, it's because one, I'm a mother.
Marka hadday maka wiilkii horreeyay baa ii dhigta iyo gabadh baa hadday igu hadhiyay school.
I have 2 children here at David Douglas left to graduate.
Marka saddex baa ii graduate.
3 graduated and 2 are here.
Marka waxaan rabaa markii ilmihii cashirkii uu dhigto macallimiintu caawiso oo hataa rays way ka caawisaa homeworka. Laakiin markii ay intaa dhameeyaan in banoon basketball everything inay kayrala ay mashquuliso ilmihii oo daalan inuu guriga imaad baan jeclahay.
What I want is that the kids to get homework help, even Rise here at school help them out with academic studies. But I would like, even after the academic studies, I would like my kids to, be busy with activities.
intuu macnaha saaxiib iyo friend kale ilmuhu yeelan lahaa muhiimka waxaa markuu waxbarashada uu ka soo baxo mashquul inuu galo ilmihii markaa aftig buu soo baxa ilmihii taas wixii uu ku hadlaya waa qalin wixii uu qabanaya waa kubad marka biis buu noqonaya waxa saqajaanima ma arkayo.
What she really wants is that instead of my kids to being busy with after school being busy with going out with friends and getting into things that they're not supposed to get into, for them to be busy with activities. And she's, sorry, and after that, well, after the school, to just be busy with events and activities.
marka wiilashu weli way iska maskaxda yihiin in markaa waxbarasho ku mashquulo iyo muhiimkiga u weyn inaanu ka hadlaya inay kayrarna nacawisaan ka rabaan.
And I want for kids to be really busy with academics, but most importantly for the kids to be involved with Cairo so that they can be involved with activities.
ilmi markuu basketball maadkiisa ku mashquulo baseball ku mashquulo waxuu soo baxa actives laakiin hadduu iskoolka markuu soo baxo saaxiibaysi leeyaan marka intaa darteed baan ayaan u hadlaya.
After the child comes out of school, and if they become busy with just friends, they might just, they might not do very well in life. But if they get busy with activities such as basketball, they might actually do very well.
marka mid labaad cashirku waa hard uu ku adagaanaya ilmaha marka maadaama cashirku ku adagayo middle school xasiisa muhiimka u weyn halka inuu ilmihiiga qalin jabiyo gabdhihii waan baas way qalin jabiyey laakiin wiilkana waxaan rabaa in mashquul badan uu helo oo maag laga caawiyo everything uu ii adkaadan rabaa sida gabdhahayga qalin jabiyo.
She said, the rest of the two kids that I have here, I want them to both graduate, and I want them to excel in academics, so just the same way that my kids did, the three that graduated.
marka anigaan jeclaa inuu ilmuhu wax barto way garanaa safiya oo middle school ka soo qalin jabisay dib u ceela baan ku
I really do, like, my most priority is for the kids to excel in academics. And even when one of my kids was one of my kids graduated middle school, I even asked for them to go back to go back 1 year so that they can excel even more.
still marka inuu ilmuhu waxbarashadu fahmad badan yeesho ingiriis luuqad ma aqaan wax ma qoro wax ma akhriyo dhammaantiin inta meesha wada joogta iyo walaalahayaba in la caawiyo ilmihii waxbarashada xoog naloo saaran rabaa.
I want the kids to excel in academics very, very well. I want everybody, all the partners, to help the kids in academics, including Cairo, basically.
Cairo
Cairo and ICO both help.
dhammaantiin waana wada
And all of you. Hi to everybody. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do you have any questions for me? Or that was it?
Any questions for our parents?
You said you run one of the programs?
Yeah, I'm the program supervisor, so I'm super hands-on.
Where at?
I basically work with all the space agents.
Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
How many space agents are you managing?
We have 17 right now.
Oh wow!
Mm-hmm.
And they're all full-time in the schools?
Yeah.
Right, but not ours. Well, I mean, I agree with everyone up here that I would certainly love to see you working in Douglas schools, in middle school and high school, and
elementary.
School. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do space agents, do they travel between schools? Like if
So it depends. If one particular school has more than 25 students, then the one space agent stays at that one particular school. If then the school only has only has a few to serve, like 12 kids, then we divide the space agent to 2 schools.
Okay, and you work with like the principals to identify how big the population is you're serving?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you have something else you wanted to?
Thank you for having us. And I hope that we will continue meeting each other and working towards the same goals.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Okay. Our next presenters are Miss Tay Spears and Company for Commitment to Matrix Update.
Thank you. At this time, I am going to call up our union president, Stephanie Myrie, our assistant director of student services, Florence Portopoulos, and our Fur Ridge principal, Amy Straw. And so as they get settled in, I want to simply start off by saying thank you for the time. Tonight, I am hoping to provide you all with a brief overview of our work around Commitment To. And as you know, Commitment To lives within our equity plan.
Bye.
And Sandy, you can advance to the next slide. I think Sandy's having some fun. She and Andy. That's awesome. Bye. That's community right there. Yes, I love that. Sandy, can I have you advance to the next slide? I appreciate that, Sandy. No, the Commitment To one. That's okay. There we go. I first want to start off with a quote that I actually stole from our superintendent, Ken Richardson. He started off our admin academy this summer with many, many quotes around climate, and this is actually one that really, really resonated with me. We get the chance to serve all kids, and we get to decide what kind of climate we want to serve them in. That is so much of our work in Commitment To, is really currently looking at our discipline matrix, at our handbook, going back and actually adding the restorative practice lens to all of that work with equity in mind. Sandy, I'm going to have you advance to the next one. This data may look familiar to you. At our last meeting, I believe it was September 8th, where we had Derek Brown, our Director of Technology, shared with us our data around discipline. And it was not good data, right? And we can accept all of that. If you saw the first slide, it read, "We own it." We own that. But we also are sitting here today because we know that change is coming, it's here, and we're doing it here in David Douglas. Sandy, can I have you advance? So now what? Again, at the very beginning, I told you we were going to provide you with a brief overview. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Education, Andy Long.
All right, good evening. Thank you, Tay. Now what? So we are pretty excited this evening to talk about Commitment To and the work that we've done and a lot of the work that we still have to go. But Sandy, do you mind going to the next slide? Thank you. So Tay's referenced a quote from that Ken referenced earlier about climate, and we know how important that is. And so we think about what is Commitment To? Well, really, our aim is to eliminate racial disparity. I mean, that's really the goal here. What it says, David Douglas School District commits to eliminate racial disparity and disproportionality in all aspects of the educational administrative systems. It's a huge lift, and it's one that we are really proud. I'll speak for myself. I'm really proud to work with these individuals and all of us at the table on. Next slide, please, Sandy. Thank you. So we've been busy with Commitment To, and you'll see kind of three pillars there. The far right side, we have done some, but the one thing we want to focus on is where that arrow is today, and I feel like it's just a huge lift that we've been able to do district-wide, and that is redesigning our Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. And that's redesigning the language in the handbook and also the district matrix, which we'll talk about in a little bit. I do want to say that it was 13 years ago that since we had done this. 2009 was the last time that we had looked at or I guess revamped, I'll say, our Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. So it was time, and I think you'll be excited to see some of it. Next slide, please. Thanks. So this, folks, is directly from our equity plan, and basically it talks about kind of what I just referenced was redesigning our handbook and the matrix. We Our goal was to have it done spring 2022, and we were pretty close. We almost had it, but we're here now, right? So, and then you could see the folks that were involved, and there were lots of people, quite a bit more than those of us here this evening. Thanks, Sandy. Next one. And then I think what this is saying, this slide, is just the work that we started. In 2021, we had a really diverse group of teachers. Go ahead.
When you say handbook, is that something you give to the students and they read it and they think this is what I have to live by? Or is this something that the administration uses when they're educating students as their, is it for both? Or what's the, I'm sorry, I just
No, great question, Aaron, and it is for both. Yeah, we reference it more so at the secondary level with students, but it does go out so our families have access to it, and it just gives us a roadmap of kind of how what Tay said is how our climate is going to be in the school.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, great question.
I also have a question right here. Dora.
Oh, hello, Dora. I couldn't figure out where that was coming from. Hello, Dora.
This review, will this also be in our student planner, which I know a lot of students in our school use and we're required to use for like going over in the beginning of the year, advisory, just going over like rules and etiquette in our school? Will this be in that?
It is.
Our whole student planner is for like the whole year. Yeah, the whole year.
Okay, then it should be a part of it, yes.
Yeah.
I know Alice is doing it in chunks because I heard last night they only got the first quarter.
All of our middle schools this year are doing it quarterly, and there were multiple reasons for that, but one of them was for this reason too, so we can make sure that this gets in for the next quarter.
Thank you.
Good question, Dora. Thank you. Go to the next slide. Thanks, Sandy. So we won't go through all the team, but I thought what was kind of interesting, folks, is that the last time I referenced in 2009 we did this, there were there were 7 folks that were involved. And so as we referenced earlier on a slide, it's just a really diverse group of people and a diverse group of responsibilities and roles throughout the district. So it's, like I said, this is my last slide. It's been a pleasure being a part of it and watching all the different types of leadership that have come out of this project. And then hopefully now we get to see our students benefit from this, because that was really the whole goal. Thank you. I think Florence now has taken it.
Red light? Yes, okay. So part of the funding that's allowed for some of these activities to take place has been our school climate transformation grant. We are in year 4 of 5. Year 4 started about 11 days ago. So we're just at the beginning. The cycle runs October 1st to September 30th. So we have the remainder of this year and then next year to implement our original plan. The focus is on reducing exclusions by providing other responsive actions, which several of you guys heard about when we got together for the data presentation. So again, staying course to that. We are able to get back on track with our COVID loss, essentially, over the last 3 years. There was a concentrated effort this past August to be able to kind of just do a lot of the pieces that we meant to do slowly over the previous 3 years. So we are just about on track if we're able to complete all of our activities this year as planned, and then that'll put us right on target to start year 5 when we are in our final year. So really, what is a restorative practice? It's a strong focus on relationships. We are really focusing on that relationship-centered learning, strong modeling and leadership, bringing in components to be able to support the work, giving our administrators and our what we are calling restorative practice champions opportunities to get additional support and coaching to be able to provide that strong leadership and positive modeling. We are also looking at a continuum of strategies, which some include teacher parts and some are office parts and some are student-centered. So there is definitely a range. And also focusing on identification of needs and accountability. So really supporting students and figuring out what is going on to be able to do that. We did land on a agreed upon definition for restorative practices. Restorative practices are a framework for building and sustaining relationships between individuals and within a community through the use of authentic dialogue and differentiated relational strategies. We can respond to student behavior while coming to a common understanding of attitudes and actions that can repair issues and make things right with others. So this is through the work that Andy and Tay had mentioned through our commitment to work, landed on what is going to be our common definition as we're talking about restorative practices. So we're kind of looking at restorative practices rollout. A lot of these pieces, day one happened in August, and then we're doing ongoing pieces throughout the year. What we've completed so far is we trained over 1,000 staff in relationship-centered learning tools at the end of August. So in 1 week, over 1,000 staff were trained on 5 basic relationship tools. Over 40 people in our district, administrators, classified, certified, have had the opportunity to get certification in restorative practices. We currently have 39 restorative practice champions. The role of that person is to model, champion the work, lead PL in buildings, and then open up their classroom for others to come in and see how to use the tool. And then we updated the behavior incident response form, which Stephanie is going to talk about briefly, and then the student rights and responsibilities, so funding for that. And then treatment agreements. 1 month in, about half of our buildings required it of their staff, and others are slowly allowing staff to use treatment agreements as they are comfortable, which is what our expectation is for this first year. Right now-ish, we have over 50 people who are signed up to attend a restorative practice conference in November. That is an out-of-state conference that is funded by the grant with approval from the U.S. Department of Education. We have professional learning late starts. We are in the process of updating the district behavior handbook. That also hasn't been updated in 7 years, not quite the 14 or 15, but in 7 years, and a lot has changed in 7 years. And that's collaboration with the teachers union. And then we are also embedding on-site coaching ongoing. So we did the initial training in August, and we're doing follow-ups and check-ins for administrators and coaching for staff who are interested with national educators for restorative practices. And then what's next are restorative responses training for administrators who have not had it yet, family nights in collaboration with SUN, working on the classroom on wheels training for our bus drivers, the connected cafeteria for our nutrition staff that'll be specifically geared for those 2 audiences, circle training, and then of course reviewing how it's going and then making adaptations and then continuing on. So making adjustments as we go. Yeah.
All right. First, I just want to say it's exciting for me to see you all in person. It's my first time I've made it to a school board meeting in person. I've been watching on YouTube, though. So thanks for having me tonight. This has been great, a great project. It was a long haul last year on this project, and I'm excited about how many people were invested in the work. So I'm going to talk about some of the changes that we made. So we made the move from old language to using inclusive language such as gender-neutral pronouns. We updated terms that are just out of date. So marijuana became cannabis. There's things that just changed through the years of how we talk and engage. New laws, we hot link some of the laws in the digital format. so that staff have easy access to those laws. And so one of the things that we found was that some of them have changed and that there are new laws that we needed to include. So that's what that was about. And then we removed some outdated language of programs like SROs. So that was a big process that we went through, looking at every bit of language that was in a pretty dense handbook. So that was big. We also were trying to make sure that we're keeping our practices consistent. We have a lot of programs in our district and a lot of acronyms. So PBIS, Positive Behavior Interventions and Support. And so we want to make sure that this restorative practices work and the equity lens that we were applying also included the PBIS piece. And that's part of what our next task is as well. So looking at, updating old language, keeping a positive focus. So one of the things with PBIS is that we always try to assert the positive thing of what students should be doing or will do, rather than telling them what not to do. And so that's a big piece of PBIS that we've worked on over the years in our district. And it was interesting to see that our student rights and responsibilities handbook didn't match that. So it just maybe points to we should do this a little more often. And then the referral form became the BERF, which is the Behavior Incident Response Form. So again, we're looking at what do we really do with a referral? A referral in the past was you send somebody to the office and then it's dealt with in the office. But we really want to talk about the fact that it's a process. So one of the things is that we have minor incidences or staff-managed behaviors. So there are many things that are happening that are managed by staff in the classrooms, in the hallways, in the cafeterias, at recess, on the bus. And those are expected to be handled by the staff. But we want to make sure that we are communicating with families when those things happen, or caregivers, so that they're part of the process and that they know what's going on. And hopefully we can be a team in addressing those things. And then when something is major or repeated over time, the same types of behavior after reteaching, after different options are presented, then it will go to the office for different supports or interventions that are needed. And again, we're contacting the caregivers and the families throughout that process. At the elementary level, we had two different forms. We had the minor form and the major form, is what we called them. And at secondary, they had one form. So as we went through this process, we saw the value of having one form, of documenting things in the same way, being consistent. So the new form is one form, and it's the same form K-12, which is an interesting lift to get language that works K-12, or pre-K-12, I guess. And so it's a big shift for our elementaries. It's less of a shift for our secondary folks. But at the top of the form are the staff-managed behaviors, so those minor incidences that happen. We're keeping track of what those are, the dates that those are happening, and the communication that has happened with families. And then it's recorded in our student management systems Synergy. If a major incident happens where extra help is necessary, then it is sent to the office where one of our principals or our vice principals or our deans are intervening in those situations. And again, communicating with families, communicating back with teachers, and then working to re-enter those students back into the classroom successfully. Any questions about that? Kind of a ramble.
We're going to pause at this time and allow Amy, who do you have joining you today? Could you introduce them?
Yes. Hi, I'm Amy Strong, the principal of Fur Ridge. So I have a lovely guest back here, which we weren't supposed to start till 8:25, but I got her here anyway real fast. I have a student to talk about restorative practices in our building, and then also my dean, Joey Hake, who is our dean of restorative practices. So I don't know if you guys want to switch out and they can come up, or we can all snuggle in. That was a quick, they moved real fast on that. They were like, bye. So we, oh, you don't want to sit close to my, okay. So I would say we probably started Restorative Practices light last year. And in our building, we do a lot of natural teaching. We realize that Commitment 2 isn't just restorative practices. It's kind of a mix of everything. So equity, multi-tiered systems of support, so PBIS, as well as how we respond to incidences in our building. But we've really worked hard with supporting our students, knowing that we have 3 options with discipline. We can ignore the behavior, we can punish the behavior, or we could guide and do guided discipline. So that's a lot of teaching around the incident that happened. And I would say over the last year and then the start of this year, we've done that. And Jada, kind enough, has experienced some of that. So we brought her in to kind of talk about it. So this is Jada. Do you want to kind of introduce yourself? What grade?
Okay. So my name is Jada, and I'm a senior.
And are you?
Okay. I'm gonna use my mic.
There we go.
There we go.
Are you graduating?
That's
When are
good?
you graduating? At the end of this year or early?
I'm graduating early, and I hopefully should be graduating or ending school next term. Isn't that what it's called? Term?
Next Hexter.
Hexter.
But it's not should be. She will be.
I will. Well, I will be. Yeah, I'm literally doing my homework right now. I hope. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there might be.
Say
less. But Jada's a former Alisat middle schooler and had worked with Tay as when Tay was a VP. But Jada, would you describe yourself, and you can interrupt me if I'm overstepping, because you will. But she sometimes gets a little hot-headed. Is that the right? So what we've really done with Jada this year and even last year was, in lieu of fighting a student, we did a lot of peer mediation, because we realize you can't just go up and fight everybody. Because in a normal situation in a building as small as ours, or really any building, if there's a fight, the kids are suspended. We have an opportunity in our building to really kind of interject, because we build those relationships with the students. So particularly last year, you came to us right away and was like, I am so mad at this girl. I am not going to be able to control myself. And we were able to sit down. And Jada, can you kind of explain that experience?
The experience of that kind of made me feel like I could solve things in my own hands. Like I could possibly be able to actually solve a problem instead of just making it bigger. So, and making it smaller, making it not even there anymore is better than it being a bigger problem and it being way more worse than what it could be.
So in that, she had an issue with another student, and we were able to sit down, and she was able to sit, and we did some pre-teaching, because that's a huge part of it, and that Joey and I can, and he can reference as well, just this year alone, how many mediations we've done so far. But it takes a lot of pre-teaching to teach the skill to sit with another student that you are mad at, and listen to them for 2 minutes without talking, even when you don't agree with them. And we kind of went into it a little blind last year, but we wanted to try it. And Jada really stepped up and sat in front of the student and listened to her side. And Jada then got to speak kind of her truth and how she was feeling in the situation. And then they both came up with an agreement, that they both, they got to literally go, okay, we're you heard this side, you heard this side, what do we want to do next? And it was really student driven, and they were able to articulate that. I will say it worked for a solid 6 months, probably.
Yep.
And then there was a little hiccup with it where she did get frustrated again, but right when she got frustrated, and then she walked straight into my office.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't have happened, I don't think, in previous time. And so, you know, even this year, when you got frustrated, what did you do?
I go straight to the office. I'm like, nah, I need to go. I'm good.
Yeah. And was able to calm down.
Yeah.
And stayed the rest of the day at school. Which, you know, our goal is obviously to keep them in the classroom as much as possible, but we also know that sometimes separating them and sending them home is necessary, but they always know when they come back the next day that they're going to have to work it out. And that's been, how many have we done this year, Joey?
Yeah, we've done probably, as far as mediations are, 10 to 12. And as far as restorative conversation that we had before that, I've probably done 35 times already this year, upwards to that. So the difference is, like, meeting one-on-one is more of a conversation, coming together is more of a conference, and then we're working towards larger structures and systems within that too. But we're seeing a lot of gains. I've had probably, I think, 8 re-entry meetings for kids that have some sort of reason why they had to leave, and we haven't had any repeat offenders on that once we've had a re-entry meeting with the same behavioral thing that we've seen. So it feels like some success at this point.
Any questions or?
Hi, Jada. It's good to see you. I guess my question is, we learned this thing in Intro to Education, which is taught by Michelle Wood. We learned about student-centered things and how it's really important to be emotionally and socially intelligent. And before I go off on a ramble, I guess my question to you guys is, how often do you plan on revising and like revisiting the student handbook? Because things change continuously.
That would not be a me question with the student handbook, but in our building, when we reference it quite a bit. I email it out to all the students. They get access to it every year. As we see behaviors rise, or just times of year when we review our behavior data in past years, we constantly reteach it. So we use the data in the building that we collect to address areas or deficits that we know we need to reteach. I would say one of the biggest things in mediation and just restorative practices, and we've been very lucky with a lot of our students, is that emotional intelligence, that skill set that is, you know, as we move forward with this, you know, there are kids that aren't ready to do that. And we've had a few of them where they were like, we're not ready to talk to the kid. And we've tried different scenarios with just writing out things, and they each have to read them and kind of come up with that. But we've really worked hard this year in particular in using our Youth Truth data around connections with peers, because we're realizing if you're frustrated with somebody and you can't see them in a humane way, you're not going to restore, because you can't restore something that's not there. And so with our Youth Truth data, as a building, we always rate high with our staff to student connection, but the last 3 years we've rated lower in our peer-to-peer. And part of that was COVID. But one of my big pushes was really getting kids to know each other. So then when we do have to interact, or we do have to mediate, that they have that capability to see themselves or part of themselves in each other. But it's a huge process and undertaking.
I have another question.
Anytime.
Yeah, I guess I don't want to speak for everyone at David Douglas, but do you know if there is people like you at David Douglas helping students?
I mean, I think, yes. I would say there are definitely people like me. I do intakes with every student that comes in my building, and I always ask them, like, to talk about a person at the high school that has impacted them in a positive way, and there's usually a list. I would say that as a school with 200 staff, there's going to be ones that connect really well, and there's going to be ones that don't. But I am a part of the high school team, and so we are constantly kind of looking at that and talking about it. I don't think they're where I'm at in my building, but I am very, very fortunate to have a staff that really does believe in this already. And we have been. So it's been, I think, really easy for my building to adopt this and to really to own it, because we know it's what's best for kids. Do you got another one? No? Yeah? You do. It's fine. I saw it. Yeah.
And the deans have been trained, and there are currently 9 classroom teachers who have also are like engaged in a part of this work. So high school, larger scale, so a lot more people, but trying to build that capacity to kind of start with what you're seeing at Fur Ridge to also be a part of the high school. So that is a slower process, but there's a good chunk of folks who are trained there also.
Do you think that this training can be like required for teachers actually?
Every teacher at the high school is trained. So I don't know if you want Fur Ridge or high school. Every teacher at the high school has been trained in the relationship portion, and then the next step they will get is some of the restorative tools to kind of use. And then the deans, when an incident happens, they're also starting to incorporate some of those rules. A big change that wasn't mentioned in this part was part of that commitment to work and that equity work that we've been doing was to try to limit the number of out-of-school exclusionary days to 3, and then requiring re-entry meetings, and that's K-12. So when a student is excluded, when they come back, there is that re-entry meeting with hopes of what we're seeing at Fur Ridge duplicated there as well. So,
That answered my question exactly. Thank you.
I've actually, it's interesting that you bring up the kind of disconnect with a little more of a disconnect between student to student lately. And I've wondered about that because we put such a high emphasis on lower numbers as far as disciplinary referral rates go, and also kind of like this calm climate in the schools, which is actually, it's wonderful to be like in Floyd and feeling like just very relaxed and calm. But I wonder if we're losing out on those student relationships that maybe kids get when there is more chaos and people bumping into each other and more learning that way, social, emotional. So I'm wondering if what you're doing now is to kind of reforge those connections, but in a different way.
I mean, I think for us is, when you look at the fundamentals of restorative practices, it's you facilitate something about yourself and getting the students to know you, but then you also give the opportunity for the students to get to know the students. And so, they do really quick, like, get to know you activities at the beginning of class, or just throughout class. But, I mean, I think overall, our goal is to get the kids talking. We know that helps with learning and hands-on. I don't know, where everybody's at in the district, but we're tiny enough that we can kind of do that.
I'd like to make just a comment too, that one of the great learnings of my life is learning there's a disconnect between when I get angry, it's usually fear or pain, and I can deal with it in different ways. I can use that anger as like a cudgel or like a sledgehammer, or I can find a way to work through it and connect with that other person on a human level. And I'm so appreciative that you're getting the opportunity to learn some of these lessons now versus when you're an old guy like me, So that's pretty cool.
I do. I don't know where we're at in the presentation here today. I have no idea. Okay, this is the end. So, no, I'm not asking about time. I just wanted a couple things just to summarize for our board specifically, and very simplified, but back to Dora, your question a little bit. This is district-wide, so the high school as well, definitely the implementation is starting, taking place, a little bigger scale, you've already heard that, but all of this conversation, really, I'm going to oversimplify here, but commitment to in general, our strategic plan, our equity plan, all related. Our old handbook was developed in a model of discipline, was developed in a model of punishment, just was. Now we're reframing that. We're trying to develop a model of support, trying to develop a model of relationships, right? And talking about how we navigate those. And we heard a story here, obviously providing tools to students and adults to interact, right, and better, and not looking for what's the discipline, what's the punishment. Instead, what's the restorative practice to move forward to make sure that we're providing that excellent education and we have a healthy, well-being building, right, supporting that piece. So that's an oversimplification, but there's this quote, and I know our board's heard it, but just in case others, when someone needs help with reading, we teach them. When someone needs help with math, we teach them. When someone needs help with social studies, we teach them. When someone needs help with behavior or interacting with others, we punish, right? That's kind of the old model. It should be we teach them. We're in the education business, not the punishment business. So that's really what we're trying to do better and learn and really implement with the guidance of the board. All of our administrators are amazing teachers. So I just wanted to say that kind of as we throw this, all of the work of this team, Tay's leadership, everyone's leadership, that's the direction we're going. It's not overnight. Obviously, it's not happening right tomorrow. Hopefully the urgency's there. It will continue to get better and better and better. But really I am, Mike, because I just wanted to thank Jada for being here. Thank you for sharing your story and communication, the bravery of that, and the reality of you talking about lessons learned. It's just amazing. And I want to say, all right, we're this far away from graduation, and congratulations. We'll be following up. Yeah, exactly. There it is. I like it.
I can't with that. Yeah, we'll take a video of you ringing the bell.
Oh, yep. I'm gonna ring that. Yep. I'm ready.
Well, I just wanted to say you're so brave for being here. And also just to reiterate that we're not trying to change you, the students, right? You're fine the way you are. We're trying to change us. We're trying to change our district, and culture starts with us. And, what you're able to do with that other student, not every person in this district can do with each other. Even in a work environment, it takes time to change culture and to learn new skills. So some are going to do better than others. I mean, even now in my work life, people have conflict when they're adults. So it's a learning process for all of us, but we're not trying to say there's anything wrong with you. You're great the way you are. It's us and the way that we interact that we're trying to shift. So thanks for being here and being brave.
Yeah.
And teaching us all.
I want to kind of connect or tack onto what you just said, Stephanie, because one of the questions that I had was, as we teach our students, right, then we evaluate our teaching by testing, and we get feedback or giving assignments to chart the learning. I'm wondering I've heard that there's a lot of instruction and training that is going on, which is phenomenal. What is the evaluation of the learning is the question that I had of the teachers and the staff, the us. How are we evaluating the learning? We're giving out a lot of instruction, which is wonderful. But, if in our classrooms, we don't just give out instruction, we have some way of assessing, has this information been learned? And so that is a question that came up for me, and probably that the ultimate feedback will come from our students, that there will be a time where she won't have to ask the question, is this being taught to everyone? It will be apparent that it has been taught to everyone, right? But that is a question that came up for me. And I also wondered with there was a mention of there's an emphasis on the shoulds now versus the should nots. And in what is being said to students. is that same emphasis in our training of what teachers or staff should do versus what they should not do. And how are we evaluating that, or how are we getting feedback on that? And last question is there any consideration if Fur Ridge might be a little bit further down the road because of their size, because they're testing last year or whatever, of having them maybe in some mentor roles as we expand this to the rest of the district? So that's a question.
Board Chair Donna, Barbara, I know that I can answer a few of those, but I am going to also rely on my dear Florence Portopopoulos to answer some of that. I'm going to go directly to the evaluation component. I think that is definitely going to show up when we continue to keep a close eye on our data around discipline. If all of these practices are in play and we are truly really following our new birth system, where we're looking at minors and majors and whatnot, and we are looking for our teachers to do more reteaching, that is going to show up naturally, I believe, in our data. We're going to see, I believe, a decrease in our data if we are truly following the systems with the integrity that we have rolled out restorative practice within our discipline model. And Florence, I am going to call on you to talk a little bit about our champions. Donna, what you touched on about Fur Ridge, also being considered maybe a model of where they can do some mentoring. We do have champions in place in each of our schools who are really leading the restorative practice, and I want Florence to talk about that for a moment.
Kind of the data piece, how do we know that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing? It's kind of multifold. There's something called a tiered fidelity inventory, and the tiered fidelity inventory, we kind of shorten it to TFI. The TFI is a measurement of how well we are implementing PBIS systems. The restorative practice work is being built into a multi-tiered system of support, and the evaluation for that happens once a year. In the spring, we saw post-COVID, I don't know if I can say post-COVID quite yet, but kind of coming back into school full-time in person, we saw a lot of our systems slip. And so we spent the spring and then the summer really taking a look at our PBIS systems and our framework around multi-tiered systems of support and what we're doing, and putting systems back into place to ensure that we are doing all of the components of implementing and supporting. For the first time, I am going through all the buildings right now and scheduling time with leadership and leadership teams. And we're evaluating, did you do the action plan that you said you were going to do for the adult portions in the building? And it's not meant to be like a punitive, caught you, you're not doing what you're supposed to, but really is, we're not gonna wait until April when we typically do those evaluations to determine if we said we did what we were going to do back a year ago. So a little bit different in figuring that out. In the buildings that I've gone into so far, all the systems have already come back up. So the data for there is looking really promising. And then of course the school climate transfer, or the youth truth data. And then after each PL, we're also doing surveys and collecting information. With that ongoing coaching, we're checking to see, are the adults doing and posting and responding in the ways that we've been training? So those are the embedded systems within that. As far as restorative practice champions, there are 2 at every elementary school, there are 4 at the middle schools, and there are 15 assigned to the high school. Half of the high school positions are full, so there's still room there to get a few more people on board. The restorative practice champion is opening up their classrooms, that model classroom. There are folks who have committed to the work and are doing the activities. They're working with leadership to kind of get those ideas when administrators are doing evaluations. That's embedded within that. Are we doing what we said as we bring in others to model and watch what's happening? So, yeah.
I think my question may be for Stephanie, which is, you know, I can imagine with any new system, there are folks who may be resistant or who don't believe in it, or maybe are having challenges with it, and so I'm just wondering, how you deal with that, and then also, I know we talked about evaluating ourselves and students and behaviors, but like, is there a way that we can also get feedback from our educators about, are they seeing a shift in climate and from their perspective?
Thanks for asking, because I was just sitting back there like, I have a teacher perspective. So as a teacher, I can tell you that I'm implementing strategies every day in my classroom from the treatment agreement that we all spent time discussing and agreeing to. How do students treat each other in my classroom? How do I treat my students in my classroom, and how do those students treat me? So we've all agreed on those things, and we've also agreed on, when we're not following those things, how do we fix that? And so that's a huge piece that we did at the beginning of the year, and there's a huge sunshine in my classroom with all the rays of my students who have signed it, as well as myself and my teaching partner. So that's a big piece, and then we do connection pieces every day. So I'm seeing, we started off the year with, we would form a circle-like figure, because forming a circle is almost impossible. And we started out easy with, like, I would ask a question, or I would make a statement like, I like pizza, and you could step into the circle, and then you could step back. And we started with things like that, which is pretty low-level engagement. And now my students, today we did one, and I said, if you can speak any language, if you could learn any language, what would you speak? And you have 2 minutes to go around and talk to as many people in the classroom as you can. And they were so excited to go and talk to each other and just engage with each other. And so you just see that growth in relationships through time. And we are purposefully doing something every single day in our classrooms to engage students with each other and with ourselves. And so, and I answer those questions too. You know, would you rather swim in Jell-O or mashed potatoes? You know, you could just do lots of things, but they get to know each other and they just get comfortable talking to each other. And then we do community circles and things like that. So we're embedding those things into our days. And certainly there are some teachers that are more comfortable doing that than others, right? And also, I will just say, as a teacher perspective, we had a lot of new learning this year during our in-service week. And so there's a juggle of that as well, right? So we're learning a whole new ELA curriculum. We're re-implementing or tightening up our PBIS systems. We're introducing restorative practices. There was a lot. And so with that said, I think it is a process for some people. We do have champions because we always have early adopters and the people who are really on board. And so we lean on those people to help bring along some of the later adopters, right? So, and to talk about, hey, this is going really well in my classroom and this is what I'm seeing as a result. Come on into my classroom and see how I do it. I'll be happy to come into your classroom and see what's happening, and we can talk about some ideas for you to implement. So that's the idea of the champion, and it really is to help with that implementation process. But we have to hold ourselves accountable. I am assuming that our administrators are looking for these things to be happening in our classrooms when they are coming in and doing their observations and evaluation process. So that's a piece of it as well.
Stephanie, I got to ask, what was a Jell-O mashed potato? What was the consensus?
So it was funny because they can either just answer the question or they can answer the question with a because. And so they both had reasons of, like, I wouldn't be able to breathe in there. And the sticky factor of the Jell-O was an issue, so more kids chose mashed potatoes. So there you go. I chose Jell-O.
Any other questions? Oh,
no question. I think I might be for Florence, though. Sorry. I have a follow-up about the tiered fidelity inventory assessment. So I'm trying to understand a little bit, like, is the evaluation a yes, no, like you did what you were supposed to do, or is it a multi? Can you just explain a little bit more?
Yeah, the tiered fidelity inventory measures tier 1, tier 2, and our targeted systems and our individual student systems. Within that, there's a series of questions and then evidence that needs to be produced, shown, documented, and ideas of where to find that type of thing. So at the universal level, one of the questions is around, did you teach expectations to students this year? It doesn't tell you, you have to do it in this way, these are the expectations you have to cover, but what did the team decide on what expectations were going to be taught to students and to the staff? And then the scoring then occurs. A 0 means like you've done nothing. A 1 is we've done some of the components, but not all of it. And then a 2 is it is 100% in place. We have a calendar that shows when we did the lessons. We have a plan book of what those lessons are. And then the other piece of it to get a 2 is we interview students and staff as part of this process. And the students have to say that, yes, my teacher did teach those expectations.
Okay.
And each question has a series of criteria that's really open-ended. The team then uses that information to do an action plan, and that's the part that we focus on is what are things that we can do to improve our system? It's not so much getting caught up in the score, but even if it's in place, what can we do to enhance that? And how do we just keep getting better? So that's.
Are you utilizing anything from the BERFs? Like, is there the parts about the follow-up with caregivers and follow-up with like what the responsive action is? Is that part of the inventory assessment?
The inventory question specifically around discipline data is there's criteria to show discipline 4 times a year, and then it lists out what types of incidents should be shared with all staff. Part of a typical Tier 1 universal meeting, like a PBIS meeting, part of that criteria is every month the team should be looking at that school-wide data, and that's where those conversations come up. We have green team leaders, and those are like the universal team leader. They're trained annually on like, here's an agenda, here are the formats, here's how you pull your data, these are the pieces you want to look at. And they have instantaneous access to that data through Swiss, which is struggling to work right now, but we do have that once it's up and running. So yeah, there's a bunch of different pieces. Specifically, so that's what happens monthly. At the TFI, the question is like, did you look at it? Okay, that's a 1, nice job. The second part is, were the responses restorative when possible? And so that's embedded as part of that 2 score. And if not, then we action plan and then revisit it every month.
And you're giving that feedback, or you're asking that question of administrators? Like, how is that?
We take several hours, and it's pre-planned. We all come together. We is myself, a student services TOSA, and then the entire Tier 1 and Tier 2 team.
Okay.
So at an elementary level, that would be like the administrator. It could be AP. It needs to be AP. Some principals are also involved. And then an intermediate and a primary, a classified, a specialist. And then at the Tier 2 team, we embed counselors within that. The entire team that supports the multi-tiered system of support is part of the conversation. So I project a question, and then we discuss it, and the team decides, these are the pieces we have in place, this is what we didn't do such a great job on, let's work on that for our action plan, and then they score themselves.
Thank you, that helps me understand this a whole lot better.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I just want to say it's an honor to serve in this district who values this restorative practice. I mean, it's like, is this real life? Because working in schools, this is not a norm. And so I'm really glad we're taking progressive approaches to really rethinking how we respond to discipline. And so a question I have is around parent engagement and community response to this. This is a new way of thinking for a lot of folks. And so it's just in correlation to the comment I've been hearing in past board meetings about SROs and those not rethinking community safety in that aspect. So especially at the elementary level, what has been the response from the community, and also what is the parent engagement piece around this new way of thinking of how we talk about peer mediation and all that? So I don't know who's...
I think that might be tag team in a couple different places. I'll start with the family piece. We're just starting that communication. In the TFIs that have started, that was part of what came up. It is actually a question on the TFI is how are you engaging your community? And that is hands down across the board, something that we definitely need to work on. I know through Kelly and Ivy working with the Sun Partners and starting to do some family nights and planning those and getting out the same communication. When National Educators for Restorative Practices is out here next, they'll do something in person and we'll invite the community to come to and be able to participate and have a dialogue around how things are going. But there are still multiple pieces that need to take place. And as far as SROs, I don't hear that feedback, so I'm going to pass it off to somebody else who might.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't know that it's necessarily been part of this conversation and the change of work we're doing in the classroom or not. Could it be part of a bigger picture, an umbrella? Is it part of the bigger picture, an umbrella? No, because quite simply, SROs don't exist. They're eliminated by the city. They don't exist. They're not available. I mean, it's just, so it's kind of a non-starter with the conversation right now. Specifically with the Portland Police Bureau, we're just trying to develop a relationship and connection for those emergencies, to have an emergency plan, and how do we have a relationship with them when they're so short-staffed? What does it look like? What does 911 look like? When do our principals call? How do we call? So that safety plan, they're part of it, but when it comes to this classroom response, community response, what we're doing in the schools, they really aren't part of the conversation at this point in time. And I apologize if that doesn't answer your question, but that's kind of
And that's good. There's a lot of internal work, right? But as we move out towards the community and folks are, this is what I've been hearing out in the community, right? Yeah. And so I know we're not there yet at the community level, but you know, at some point, what is the response for the community about this new way of thinking, right? And so I know I love hearing about the stories. You answered all my questions about the internal process. And as we move towards out the community, I want this to be a blueprint for how other school districts can really reform the way of thinking around discipline, and really excited to see this roll out.
I would say too, knowing our student and community populations being so culturally diverse, that there are, like with any two families, among various cultures, extreme differences in what's appropriate, not appropriate, and how you deal with discipline. And so I think the more that we can dig into understanding how we do it and why in the classroom and in our school district, you know, what happens at home is at home, but here's how we do it here, and why I think is going to be extremely important when we roll out this to community, that we really work with partners like we saw here earlier, right, who have completely different experiences and come from different places culturally.
I just wanted to speak to the communication piece with families. And at the elementary level, we as teachers communicate a lot with our families, more than just in a different way than secondary does. And so we engage with our families a lot. And so one of the things that we're doing is when we do those treatment agreements, we're sending those home to families with an explanation of this is what we did, this is what this means, this is how we use it in the classroom, and then some of those explanations of some of the strategies that we're using. So those might be in a school newsletter, but they also might be in just a teacher communication as well. So that is happening at the elementary level. I don't know if it's happening in every school, but I do know that we tend to over-communicate a little more at the elementary level.
Has the parent response been pretty positive about this process?
Yeah, there's definitely been some questions about, you know, like, this seems super different from when I was in school, and I'm like, that's a good thing from my perspective, because it's different from when I was in school as well. And you know, just the idea that it's about building relationships and building skills for kids to be able to communicate with each other and problem solve. It's not necessarily new. It has a different name, but it's part of what we have been doing, hopefully, and probably some more than others. But, you know, we've been working with our toolbox skills in SEL at the elementary level, and so this is just an extension of that, really. And we have been working on trying to have those conversations of, you know, okay, well, you were really mad at recess today, and this happened. What are some skills that you could
employ next time instead of doing what you did today? And how are we repairing those relationships? So I feel like we've been trying to do some of that at the elementary level. Over the past several years, it hasn't been formalized until this year. And we're still working on some of those processes. But I do think that that conversation has started with a lot of parents before this year. And this is just a more formalized or extension of that.
Donna, just because you brought up community and family, because I have had, of course, my granddaughter's older in middle school, so I'm hearing more the middle school level than the elementary level right now. But I think we need to do more, maybe short, brief things in, whether it's the emails or whatever, defining what you're doing, because what the comments to me were that, well, they're just giving it to the kids to solve because the teachers don't want to solve it. So I think we need to educate the parents on what it is, not just that we're doing this new thing, but actually what it means, because that's how some of them are seeing it and complaining about. So it might be good with communication that our schools are getting out that this is a good thing and it's going to work this way. It's not that we're just throwing things to the kids to solve it. So just a heads up.
I think there's some confusion too. I think you bring up a great point, Frida, and it's an awesome question because sometimes our families, I think, they're used to, like when it comes to our level, you're not suspending them. Why? Tell me why you wouldn't do that. And there's just a lot of new learning. And sometimes that takes a lot of time and listening and not right away for families. So I think there's a long way to go. So I appreciate the question because we are doing our best, but I think Ken said it's not an overnight change, especially for some of our families, which is, personally, I understand.
And restorative is still a new word to a lot of our community members, so when I explain to them what restorative justice means, they're still asking, what does that really mean? So
that's why I'm saying little pieces, especially with Parent Square now, where they can send out maybe in their newsletters or whatever they're sending out, just little pieces of info not all in one big hunk, because most people don't read that, but little
Sounds
pieces.
like a great champion responsibility. No,
I'm just saying that might, at least parents could start to understand.
Because I know a lot of that work comes from their parents and their home life. And so, yes, we can do all this restorative work at school, but once they leave the school, what does that look like? And so I know that partnership with parents and community is a big piece in restorative practices. And so just being able to align that piece is just, to me, a big part of the work.
So quickly, I just want to add, because all very important and can do better and should and will. And again, all of this, we know this isn't, we're done, right? This is a start. This is a launch. But I also want to point out that we have had feedback as well on the other side, right? That parents have noticed. We had an email that Andy read this morning from a parent in our district that basically from conferences and didn't specifically talk about restorative practices, but talked about community, talked about what that parent felt like, talked about the questions that the teacher asked that was more about how are you, right? So, from trauma-informed practices, there's all kinds of pieces that we're putting together and working on. And again, we're not perfect by any means, and we do need to do a better job of communicating, and we're in step one here almost, right? But the reality is we are starting to hear from some families that are seeing it and feeling it as well, and that's a celebration in itself, right? So just back to the simplest of terms, everyone knows this. There's whole books, doctorates on this. Change is hard, right? And this is a change, so yeah.
Great. Well, thank you all for the presentation. Thank you for answering our many, many questions. Thank you very much for the work that you're doing every day and your commitment to it, because we know it is, as people have said, a heavy lift, but it's good work. And so I just want to encourage you in that, and you are an encouragement to us. I was sitting here thinking, wow, imagine what high school may be like if this was fully implemented in our elementary kids by the time they get there, and how they will have those tools because they've been using them over all these years, so they can work out and communicate with each other, communicate with their teachers in such more helpful and healthful ways. So thank you, and just keep it up, because we need you to do that for us. And so now we are ready to move to our resolution for Indigenous Peoples Day. And as is becoming our custom, asking our board members to share in the joy. I don't know. Yeah, I guess so. Well, he was asking, should we watch the video before we do the resolution? Yeah. Okay. Oh.
Hi, my name is Maria Adams. I'm a language development specialist at Earl Boyles, and I wanted to share about a listening circle that we've been holding since last year with about 8 of our Native students, 7 fifth graders and 1 fourth grader. So 7 of our students have moved on to middle school, and we have 1 student left. And I was able to sit down with her yesterday and record this video to share about how we hold a listening circle at Earl Boyles.
Hi, Brielle. Hi, Miss Adams. Thank you for meeting with me today. I wanted to ask you about your experience with the Native Listening Circle that we've been holding since last year.
The experience has taught me a lot of Native people. It has more to open my body. It gave me good spirit around my house, and like I'm more caring about my family members now, and we're hanging in there.
We call this the listening circle. Why do we call it the listening circle?
Because we want to listen to other people, what they say about their culture. We want to listen what they say about their Ojibwe, their Chinook tribe, their Montana, where they're from, and we just want to listen to what they're saying.
And when you speak and you share, do you feel like you're listened to?
Yeah, I feel like I'm listened a lot.
How is this circle or this group of students different than other groups that you've been in at school?
When I was in kindergarten, I was really not. I was also inside of a group, but they didn't teach me a lot. They said we were gonna do something similar like this, but it was way different. They just said that we would get bullied and stuff. They would I don't even know. I don't even remember what they said. But we should always forget that we're still here.
We're still here, and that's the book that we read together. We learned some words. What were those words that we learned, and why were they meaningful?
So there's one where they took all the Native people's lands and stuff, and they punished them because they wanted them to talk this way. They wanted them to cut their hair off. They wanted to do everything their way instead of the Native people's way. I think Native people have to have a little bit more space.
And of course we learned that who was here first?
Native people.
Do you recommend this listening circle for other students of different cultures and Native cultures?
I agree, because I need to have my brother. He's not really doing well. I need to have him do well, because there's a lot of stress to have being an older brother and an older sister, so we just need to calm down a little bit. So Miss Bree also talked to his counselor and checked in, and I think they should also have a Native circle.
And that's at the high school.
Yeah.
And when we join together for our Native listening circle, we have these 3 parts of the listening circle that we've agreed to.
Would you like to share about what these 3 parts are?
So number 1 is we start with 5 volcano breaths to get all the stress off. And then we take a turn going about our day of a circle or arrow. An arrow is where you have something that has gone away from you, you're really upset or you're sad about it. A circle is something that went really good inside of your day, and go around the circle again, offering a hand to who needs to share people. So like if you want to give a hand to somebody, if they need help right now, you could help them out and stuff.
Can it be advice or connecting with them in a friendly way, letting them know that you heard them, or does it have to be help in the physical way, like actually doing something for them?
No, it could be really anything, just to give them a hand around their body and just to help them.
Thank you so much, Brielle, for sharing your experience. And you know, you were part of our first group, our first Native Listening Circle, and I know that you will continue to be part of this circle because you helped establish these different things that we do together. You were part of, do you want to share this?
Yeah.
Our centerpiece?
This is our centerpiece that we made, and it's about all like native stuff. So here's Chinook tribe, there's Black Claw somewhere in here, there's just beating, there's Montana, there's Blackfeet, Washington and stuff, there's powwow, there's drums, there's just a lot of stuff to this centerpiece.
And these are important to your traditions. Yeah. And to your identity. Thank you so much for sharing this, Brielle.
Brielle mentioned that we kind of check in with our body. This is also an extension of our language work. I brought the poster that we've been using at our school for a few years now, and we learn the language of our body. We learn what it feels like to be calm, and we learn what it feels like to be in 3 other states. We have 4 different states our bodies can be in, and you mentioned one of them, Erin. This is the out of control one, and yeah, we're different people when we're there than when we're calm. We learn the language of our caring heart, and we learn that we and others create an environment, and that we all need to take space and make space for others. And we learn the language of our curious minds, and this is all the inner language, and then we get to the outer language. And so she mentioned a few of those things, so I wanted to add some context to those. And we also tied the listening circle to student intervention team goals. So many of those students were brought up during this student intervention team meetings, and so we were able to measure growth that we saw in students that participated in these circles. And so it's been wonderful. And this year we are actually calling it Native and Students of Color group because we had other students who wanted to join and are actually working towards, if they have a good day, they're able to go to the circle, and if they're out of class or and we actually are not worrying about those other things because they're making it to the circle every day. They want to be there. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Awesome. Okay. So why don't we start this side this time with our resolution, and we'll go around till we finish.
David Douglas School District Indigenous Peoples Day Resolution. Whereas the David Douglas School Board of Education Board recognizes that the indigenous peoples of the land that would later become known as the Americas have occupied these lands since time immemorial, and
whereas the board values the many contributions made to our community through indigenous peoples' knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, arts, and the deep cultural contribution that has substantially shaped our district, and
whereas the board has established that each student is to be celebrated and appreciated for the distinct and vibrant contributions made by sharing cultures, language, ideas, beliefs, and values within a school community. And
whereas the board recognizes that the David Douglas School District is built on the homelands and villages and traditional use areas of the Multnomah and Clackamas Chinookan of the region, without whom the building of the district would not be possible. And
whereas the district has an adopted equity policy that states our commitment to closing the achievement gap for Indigenous peoples and creating an educational environment where all students can benefit equally from the educational programs offered. And
whereas the district is working towards eliminating the racial predictability and disproportionality on all aspects of education and articulated action steps in the adopted district strategic plan and the district equity plan. And
whereas the idea of Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations to the United Nations. And
whereas the Oregon American Indian Alaska Native State Plan mandates that the public schools of our district teach about the history, culture, contemporary lives, and governments of the Indigenous peoples of the Americas, with special emphasis on those from Oregon and across the Pacific Northwest.
Now, therefore, be it further resolved that every second Monday of October will now be Indigenous Peoples Day in the David Douglas School District.
be it further resolved that the district shall encourage staff to utilize the second Monday in October as an opportunity to reflect upon the ongoing struggles of Indigenous peoples of this land, to celebrate the thriving cultures and values of the Indigenous peoples of our region, and to stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples elsewhere.
Be it further resolved that district calendars and websites shall reference the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day.
Be it further resolved that the board strongly encourages our staff and community to observe, recognize, and celebrate the culture, heritage, and contributions of Native Americans to our country, our state, our cities, and our schools.
Thank you all. Okay. We are moving along, We've gotten to our consent agenda, and this is an action item. And is there anything that anyone wants to pull from this before we vote? If not, then can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, it has been properly moved in second that the items of our consent agenda be accepted. Is there any question? No discussion? Okay, all in favor? I'm sorry, I can't do it that way. Sorry. Paul, reverting to old habits. Wildland.
Aye.
Frida Christopher.
Aye.
Aaron Barrow.
Aye.
Gabrielle Saldana.
Aye.
Barber, aye. Heather Franklin.
Aye.
And Stephanie Stevens.
Aye.
The ayes have it. It is so ordered. And now we will hear from the wonderful Miss Brooke O'Neill with our Division 22 Standards Report and the Division 22 Standards slides.
Well, thank you. I will try and make this exciting. I've been listening to all this inspiring testimony, and I'm going to give you a compliance report. So it may not be quite as inspiring as the other work you have heard tonight, but I will do my best. And Sandy, do you have the presentation? that I shared you, because we will go, yes, we will go through this. Okay, so, and we can go to the next slide. This is our annual Division 22 Assurance Report. And again, this is not an action item for you, but it's more for the board, an acknowledgement that you have received the report that we're giving tonight. So what are Division 22 and what does it mean? So all of the Oregon administrative rules that are adopted by the State Board of Education go into Chapter 581, which is the Oregon Department of Education. And then within Chapter 581, there are 26 divisions. And we are talking about one of those divisions tonight, which is 22, and those are all of the rules for elementary and secondary schools. So it's a basic level of compliance for all of the schools across the state of Oregon. So it shows that we are a standard school district. And again, it's an equity piece. So regardless of where you are in the state of Oregon, that we can say, you'll hear me talk later, that this is baseline service. It's not all we can do, but it is the minimum we need to do. Okay, next slide. Okay, so our why, and again, it's about a high quality, equitable educational experience for all students in the state of Oregon. It always gives us a chance to reflect on where we are. Again, it's the floor, not the ceiling of the work we do in a district. And again, it gives us an opportunity as a district to reflect, talk about things we can do better, where we can innovate. And as Ken always says, it helps us get better. So it is a good process. So this year you will see there are different categories. There's 4 big buckets of the Division 22: teaching and learning, health and safety, district performance and accountability, and human resource and staffing. And then there's subcategories underneath some of those pieces. It says there are over 50 rules. There were 58 rules that we reviewed this year, to be exact, which we'll go over in a little moment. And then next slide. You can see a snapshot of what some of these are. These are not obviously an exhaustive list, but you can see, for example, under curriculum and instruction, we have required instructional time, human sexuality education, comprehensive school counseling, and you can see just a snapshot of what some of those things mean and what we're reviewing. So what we do when we report to you and when we are reflecting on last year. So how did we do last year? And then next year at this time, we will be reflecting on the 22-23 school year. So we're always looking at the prior year, which is very important. Next slide. So there were some changes this year to Division 22, and you can see some of those were a result of the pandemic. The assessment of essential skills was suspended for the class of 22, 23, and 24. And also we have prior given a yearly kindergarten assessment when students enter kindergarten, and that has also been suspended for this past year. And then they've added some, and they always do all the time. So there will be an addition of operational plans that we need to submit a plan to the Department of Ed that they will provide us a form. So those are new. Okay, so the steps that we are required to do across the state, we report to our local school board, which we're doing tonight, by November 1st every year. That is required. We also need to post our community report, which was in your board packet, on our website. And then there is a separate report that I will complete and submit to the Oregon Department of Education. So there's 3 different layers of the process. So what does that look like for David Douglas? And when this report goes on our website, you will see District Report on Division 22 Standards Compliance. That is linked. That is our actual report that's in your packet. We will also have it as a separate attachment on our website. But Cabinet, what we do is we look at all the standards. There were 58 total this year. They are divided amongst us based on the work that we do and our area of oversight. We also gave principals this year a set of substandards for them to review for their school. We can't mark we're in compliance if we have schools not implementing some of the work that we're doing. So our principals did that review as well. We found that we had 57 of the standards were in compliance. And we have 1 standard which we are not, and that is middle school PE. That will be the second year that we have marked that we're not in compliance for PE. How it typically works is if you mark that you're not in compliance, you have until the following school year to be in compliance. So I want to unpack that a little bit for you. What does it mean not to be compliant, and why are we not in compliance? So the Division 22 standard says students will receive PE throughout the entire school year. Our current practice in David Douglas is students receive, and this is just middle school, students receive 3/4 of PE and 1/4 of health. This is very common, as I know as I've met regionally with all of our surrounding districts. It's a very common practice that most of us do. So what we would need to do is pull health out and have a full year of PE. That has some implications for us around staffing and what does that look like within the schedule. Another big piece is 225 minutes of PE each school week. So it's not an average time, it's a weekly time. And just to let you know what that looks like, we are currently on a block schedule in our middle schools. So we have A days and B days. Our schools vary a little bit, but approximately 82-minute blocks. So you can see on a 5-day week, if PE is on an A day for me, I would have 246 minutes of PE. So great, we met it for that week. But the following week, we do not. We only have 164 minutes of PE, so we are short 61 minutes for that week. So those are the pieces that put us out of compliance. So we did submit corrective action to the Department of Education, primarily just around the minute components, because that's the part that's really been challenging to try and solve, for one. So part of our corrective plan was we would have our PE classes. Plus, what we're doing at the elementary is we're adding structured movement within the classroom that are tied to the PE standards, and those are taught by the teachers themselves, the classroom teachers. Plus, we're including our social emotional learning time, because PE Standard 4 says the physically literate individual exhibits responsible personal behavior and social behavior that respects self and others. So at elementary, we're including all of those pieces, and that works. It does not work at middle school. You can see the response from ODE. While they applaud our efforts to thoughtfully integrate PE within other classroom opportunities, they were very nice in the feedback. The TSPC licensing requirements limit who can teach PE at the middle school level. It has to be a certified PE teacher. So that has huge implications, and I know, again, just in a lot of regional conversations that we're having, everybody is really struggling with this, and so hence we are in our second year of not being in compliance. We've never had to mark that before, and I'm going to let Ken maybe speak to that in a moment, because I know he's having some conversations at the state level as well. What we will do now is continue to explore middle school scheduling options and what that looks like. We've been working with ODE to say, can you give us examples of schools that are on block schedules that can meet this requirement and what it looks like. The examples we have gotten are all schools that have a straight period day. They're not on a block schedule, so they have a 7-period day. They have PE every day, and then you can meet that. So Ken, I don't know if you want to add anything about some of the conversations being had and conversations with Colt Gill.
Yeah, so we've had the opportunity to meet with Colt Gill, the Director of Education, ODE. I've met with him a number of times. Brooke and I just recently had a phone Zoom meeting. We also had individuals and representatives from COSA at that meeting as well, because this is an ongoing conversation. I don't want to make an excuse, but we aren't the only district. I mean, it's virtually impossible to meet the minutes on a block schedule. So the question is, really, this is our second year. What is ODE going to say? And they're currently navigating it. I can tell you that they're currently trying to figure out what will the response be, because either there's a change and some sort of flexibility, or the communication will be to us to meet this that we have to change our schedule. We can't have a block schedule. That would have an enormous amount of impacts, and that if we have to go there, we have to go there. But right now, we're still in that communication phase about where are we going with this, and will there be any flexibility. Also, I want to add what Brooke said around the health component. Again, that model itself, where you have 3/4 PE and 1/4 health. Brooke did say, absolutely, if we separated it out so we have a full year PE and health, that would be more staffing, right? But there would also be an implication and unintended consequences of less electives. And our middle schools already do not have a lot of electives. So the reality is PE is important. We value PE. We have PE specials at every single elementary school, which we had way before this ever came through, and we're still doing. We value it at middle school. You know, in the SIA report, we just added health teachers to it to meet the requirements of health and making sure that we have health teachers at the middle school level. So there's pieces that we've put in place and will continue to, but right now that unintended consequences of what goes, we're still navigating and want some feedback from ODE. Like Brooke said specifically, and again, partners, I'm not trying to throw anything, you know, whatever it may be, but there is not an example of a block schedule that meets it. There just isn't. We haven't got one. They've given us examples with a straight 7 that meets it, but that's the question we have. I can tell you that there is, again, an opening around the conversation. It is not door closed, this is it, go. It is, let us continue to navigate this, let us continue to have conversations, and we'll see how this plays out one step at a time. Ultimately, I think that's it. I think you covered everything, Brooke. It's an ongoing conversation. We have a meeting next week. We have our basically annual meeting. We have regular meetings with superintendents across the states, right? COSA meetings, and our first one this year is Monday for a regional. And so this will be part of the conversation regionally, because my understanding is none of our neighboring districts are meeting it either. So it's kind of we're just kind of moving forward with we're owning this, being honest, being transparent, and looking for some direction, and we go from there.
When you talk about pulling health out, because that really is only a quarter, but the electives tend to be a semester, that would really mess up the schedule.
It would be difficult. You'd have to have some sort of quarterly wheel. But again, if they're in PE one period, now they're in PE 3/4, and they have their electives. Now they'd be PE and health for that quarter. Yes, it'd be it's doable, but there'd be something that goes. There'd be something.
Well, yeah, I could see an elective would have to go of some nature, you know, or having quarter electives instead of a semester elective.
You would have to on that one semester.
Yeah.
You'd have to do some sort of quarterly wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, and ideally we would increase our health if we could, you know. I know our health teachers struggle meeting all of the needs, all of the standards they're required to teach. But yeah, I think Stephanie. Yeah.
No, I was just wondering, has this been approached? Because it looks like it's in the law. Have we talked to our legislative champions about taking out the per week requirement?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
where are folks around the legislation with this?
Yeah. So the answer is yes. And before I answer that question, there's one thing I left out, because just in the rules itself, you saw that response. To be a PE teacher in middle school, you do have to be certified, right? But in this law, to meet the minutes, it doesn't say it has to be provided by a PE teacher. So just that in itself, sometimes there's flexibility where ODE, you know, you can, how you enforce and make your own rules, is that the intention of the standard, right? Like our creative response maybe could qualify. It doesn't say it can't. So that's part of the process and navigation of this. But yes, it is at the legislative level. When I talk about COSA being at those meetings with us, there's a legislative representative there who has been working on this for the past number of years. And specifically, there is support at the legislative level. Historically, well, I don't want to get into politics of it, but so the reality, though, there are definitely conversations at that level, Stephanie, yes.
Yeah, and I've also been involved in some regional meetings where they were working on a position paper to say, one, we wholeheartedly believe with the intent behind the administrative rule, our students need more physical activity and need to be up and moving, but could compliance be measured in a way other than actual weekly minutes? Yeah. Yes. So more to come, but we do want to be transparent that we are out of compliance, so we'll continue to problem solve, or work with ODE, work with our principals and teachers and community around scheduling options and seeing what that looks like, and see where we land.
What is the potential consequence if you don't get in compliance?
Yeah, yes. My colleagues over here said money, and ultimately sanctions. Ultimately, they could withhold funds. Ultimately, that it could be really serious. So they have the power. Ultimately, it really is money. It's our school funding. That's what they could hold back. That's what they could sanction us on. That's what they can. Yeah. So we haven't received no communication of that. I mean, in this case, there's nothing to where there's going to be this huge hammer. I mean, we aren't saying sorry, we're not going to do it. What are you going to do about it? That's not what we're saying at all. We're saying we came up with a solution, and then we were told it doesn't work. So then we're saying, okay, what's the next steps? What do we need to do? And at this point, they're saying. They're saying 1, patience, 2, keep communicating with us, and 3, we'll see if we can't have some sort of resolution throughout this year. And as I stated, ODE might say at some point, no, sorry, you have to, and then we will be sitting down with our community and our middle schools and changing the schedule, because really that'd be the only way we could do it. So
would that be a change in labor agreements?
Oh, well, I can
new MOUs and
yes. So the answer is yes, from the standpoint that working conditions, how that would play out. I have not had any conversations with our union, but I can tell you other districts that have gone from a block schedule back to straight 6 or 7 or 8. There has definitely been a demand to bargain around change of working conditions and how that's played out. So yeah, it definitely could have implications there.
It's very ironic because when they started block scheduling, a lot of the teachers at the middle school and high school were fighting it tooth and nail, and now they don't want to get rid of it.
That's correct. Yeah.
Did you say that the elementary schools are in compliance?
Yes, elementary's in compliance, but we're able to have our classroom teachers also be adding movement tied to PE standards within their classroom, and they don't have to be PE certified for it to count. And so yeah, elementary meets the requirement.
A bit more flexibility.
Yes.
And also, as a member of the Legislative Policy Committee, they've been asking us what our districts want to lift up to the legislator. So I'll send them an email to our representatives and see if we can get this on the docket for the next year, as an advocacy piece. Yeah.
Thank you. So looking ahead for next year at this time, when we come to you for compliance on this year, there's a couple added rules. Again, we've already talked about the operational plans. There is added rules around agreements entered into with voluntary organizations. And then on the next slide, you will see more around talented and gifted programs and requirements for that. So with that, are there any other questions that you guys have around Division 22?
Okay, thank you, Brooke. We appreciate that. Next up is Mr. Derek Brown and our ODE Integrated Plan update.
Thank you, Chair Barber. Thank you, Sandy. Just going to spend a few minutes giving you a bit of an update. I know we talked in the past, give you a really quick overview of what the integrated plan is. Wanted to share a little bit more specific information for you and just kind of let you know where we are in terms of the planning and the timeline, and a little bit more specific information about what community engagement is going to be looking like. The top part of this document just simply walks through, again, kind of an overview. This is an opportunity that the state is giving us to take a look at a handful of programs or initiatives, however you want to phrase them, and work together with our community to figure out ways to bring them together and ensure that they are aligned. And the goal by doing that is to improve learning conditions for all students and teachers. Could you scroll down just a tiny bit, Sandy? Just to highlight a couple of things on this graphic. This has been an important graphic for us as a district team coming together and do some planning. So that you're all aware, the programs that are listed on the left-hand side there are the things that we are trying to integrate. And we know that when we do that work, we do it using those common elements. We want authentic engagement with our community. We want to do it with a clear focus on equity, and we always want to look at our data and a number of other things listed there. We have been working as a team to come up with how do we do all of that and organize it in a way that we can meaningfully engage with the community and collect the kind of input that will help us make sure that indeed these programs are aligned to our strategic plan, to our equity plan, and that we've authentically given opportunities for all voices to come to the table. So we've chosen to do that by organizing community engagement around those 4 common goals that you see on the right: well-rounded education, equity, meaningful engagement with the community, and then the last one being strengthened systems and capacity. Can you scroll down just a little bit? Thank you. So again, we've got a team at the district office. We've had some consultation from ODE and Multnomah ESD to help us walk through it a little bit. We are getting ready to engage in a number of different community engagement activities. Let me talk a little bit about the timeline first, and then I'll come back and say a little bit more about community engagement. September through kind of mid-November is when we will be facilitating forums with the community. We've been fortunate that our culturally specific family cafes are allowing us to come in and have some discussions with those groups as well to collect their feedback about the things that are going well and the things that they would like to see us work toward improving in those 4 goal areas. We created an online survey that again is organized around those 4 goal areas. That was sent out actually earlier this week via Parent Square, so we've already had a pretty good number of responses to it. We will be, of course, giving that survey to folks that attend the community forums as well as family cafes. The community forums and the survey are designed for anyone, so they're designed for family members, for students, for staff, for general community members, business leaders, whoever might choose to attend. So again, we're hopeful that we'll get a lot of folks interested in having those conversations with us. Again, the survey is designed in that way as well, so anybody can take it. And we're looking forward to getting all that feedback. December to January, we'll be taking a look at all of that information. We'll be pulling other data, some of it you've seen in some previous board meetings, and then going through what we refer to as the needs assessment. So again, that's looking at the input you've received from the community, taking a look at your current data, not just assessment and growth data, but discipline data, attendance data, data from our youth truth, data from our telesurveys, just any information we have is helpful. And trying to organize that and find some meaning in it and really make some connection points between what the needs assessment is telling us and the things we're doing to meet our strategic and equity plan goals. So those kinds of activities will be happening between December and January, and then we really go into building the actual plan at that point, and we'll be coming and visiting with you in that February to March time frame to share a little bit about what we learned from community forums and surveys and everything else, and then getting your feedback on what that plan is looking like, questions you have, adjustments you'd like us to make. So we'll come see you a couple times there. It is required from ODE that the board does approve that plan and the budget that will be associated with it, and then we'll submit it by the end of March. I don't have it on this document, but then we'll also enter a 3 or 4 month period of answering questions from ODE and negotiating back and forth with them as well. So in terms of the community forums, again, I mentioned we're organizing those around those 4 goal areas, and the survey is organized in that way as well. The first community forum is next Thursday night, so a week from tonight. I'll send this to you in a separate document so you have the full list of community engagement. And don't have to go back to the minutes to capture it. But a week from tonight, we have our first forum. The next day, so next Friday, we'll have another forum, and then a couple weeks later, we'll have the last one. So there's 3 general community forums that, again, we'll be inviting anybody to come to. We've scheduled time, again, with the culturally specific groups, and so I'll make sure you have those dates as well. We're also likely to add some focus groups, possibly staff focus group, possibly student focus group. We want to make sure that we're reaching out to as many audiences as possible to invite input and have the dialogue with us. So I'll pause for a moment and see if you have any questions about that.
Where are the general forums being held?
Yeah, we're the one next Thursday will be over at the Fur Ridge School. The one the following day, Friday, is an afternoon session, so that'll be from noon to 1:30 in this room. I should have mentioned the Fur Ridge next Thursday is 6 to 7:30, so that's an evening event. And then a couple weeks later, it'll be back at Fur Ridge again. That's November 3rd, again from 6 to 7:30. So the survey I mentioned went out via Parent Square earlier this week, and then we put it up on the website today with a bit of an explanation of what this is all about. And so we will routinely reach out to our community, working with our principals to make sure that they're communicating with their newsletters and other modes of communication to let folks know both about the in-person opportunities to engage as well as the survey.
Can I ask that? So to clarify, ODE is saying we have all these different pots of money from different programs with all these different specifications and stipulations on how it's spent, and we want to combine all that into one big pot of money. Is that what they're saying, or is that going to change the? I don't know. I know it's way more complicated than that, but is that going to change, like the regulations on how this, like the SIA funds? I know are really strict on how we could spend that. Is this going to change those structures, or?
We haven't been provided any guidance about any changes to any grants and what's allowable to spend on or not allowable, things like that. When you look at that list, high school success, that's Measure 98, student investment account, everybody's very familiar with that. CTE, we've got federal Perkins money, things like that. So those are grants, they have plans, they have evaluation tools, they have budgets, they have all those things. The other pieces in there, like continuous improvement planning, that's not really, that's an exercise that we go through with our schools on a regular basis to identify opportunities to improve, and we and our site councils and other folks, and we describe these are the moves we think we're going to be able to make to improve whatever metrics we've identified are important. Everyday Matters has to do with attendance. There isn't a specific plan and budget or anything like that that goes along with Everyday Matters. And so it's kind of, the guidance from ODE has been, it's built into all of those things. You're talking about how you're reducing absenteeism and increasing attendance. Same with early indicator and intervention systems. So you're right, Aaron. It's a bit of an interesting mix of programs to synthesize all together. Some of them have very robust community engagement that's already taken place, and this will be another opportunity. We're viewing this as an opportunity to present to our community, here are the things that we've named that we're doing, and we know that these are aligned to our strategic and equity plans, but we want to know about your experiences as a parent, as a student, as a staff member, whoever you might be, what's working, what's resonating with you, and perhaps more importantly, where do you see opportunities for us to improve? What do we need to know about things we can do better in these areas? And that'll allow us to build that plan and know where we might need to make some shifts to address those particular needs. So it is an opportunity for us to just align all those things and make sure we're doing the right work.
What's the reasoning that ODE's given for kind of realigning this way of looking at these different pots of money? Is that, I think you just clarified that, but just to...
Yeah, I believe that they received some feedback from school districts that, you're asking us to build separate plans, separate budgets for some of these things, and it feels a little scattered, a little disjointed. So their response to the state has been, let's try to merge all those things together into one plan. So it's one plan with quite a bit of narrative, one budget, and that will make things more efficient and a little easier for us to track and evaluate. That one of the things they talk about in the guidance is we want you to have a more transparent way of evaluating the programs that you're implementing to meet these goals. And that's I'll let Ken, if he wants to add some words.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. No. It's waving you off. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is the intention. Bye. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. The intention is to be supportive. The intention is that, these shouldn't be siloed. How do we put them together? And, the reality is trying to get into ODE, it shouldn't be about compliance. So really the planning piece, right? So that the intention is helpful. The reason that we're all kind of, stuttering a bit is it's huge. It's so big, and seeing the end game right now is a little difficult. I hope a year from now we'll say, wow, this helped. Right now it almost feels like more work. It feels more disconnected, and the opposite is what they're trying to do. So anyway, it's one step at a time. No matter what, the planning, all that, there's a huge lift there. But the upfront, the process of listening to our family community, I mean, that, again, the opportunity there, if you think about SIA, Your Voice Matters, kind of the process we went through, we're modeling after that. So really that's the fun piece. That's the exciting piece. It's after that, putting this plan together and what exactly it will look like and what does it change going forward. I'm having a tough time picturing right now with ODE, and again, that's just my limitations. So hopefully we'll see as we move forward.
And isn't our Perkins money, we collaborate with MASD with Perkins funds?
Some of it, yeah. There's collaborations and partnerships there. Yeah,
that's what I thought.
It's big. It's really big, huge lift for a lot of people involved. And but again, the first piece, really wanted to update you here, answer questions. 2 is make sure you understood the vision of next Thursday. 3 is invite all of our board members, or as many who can come to those activities. Love to have your voices involved as well. And 3, I'll do a little plug. We're a little early here, but we will be starting out with these meetings with a welcome and kind of going through just a few comments. One of those comments will be the reality that we have a bond on the table, and we will be sharing some information about that bond. So any board member that is in attendance that can stand up shoulder to shoulder and have a conversation. The intention of the meeting is not the bond. The intention of the meeting is this, but a short kind of conversation and quick hit and connection is just another opportunity.
So just to keep in mind, everybody, that in less than 4 weeks, we have an election and we will have a new governor, and that new governor may have different people in leadership at different agencies. So while that is an exercise we're going through now, we have a little uncertainty going on, and we don't know who she, because it will be a woman, who she will have in leadership, if it will be Colt, if this will be the direction. So we need to be a little flexible as well, just to keep in mind. I know we're like, oh, maybe this will be good a year or 2 from now. And I'm thinking maybe this won't even be here a year or 2 from now. That's just a reality of the administrative branch of government. And a bill is a bill. Or anyway.
Okay, so thank you for that update. And Derek, you can continue with our data report. And maybe just in consideration of time, if we can speak to those specific questions that were brought up previously with intention, and then highlight key points out of the rest.
Yeah. As part of what I submitted to you, there was some discipline information and there was some attendance information because you've been asking for that monthly. I didn't put any of that into the slide deck. I just was going to talk to you briefly about last year's state assessment results. There are a couple of highlights to make.
Okay.
And then a little bit about school report cards, because those are going to come out in a week, and I want you to be aware of that information. So thank you for the time. Yeah, just going to talk about ELA math and science from last spring. Some of this you've seen. I did format a bit of it slightly differently to give you a little bit of a different look at it. And then I have one slide on school report cards. So let's go ahead and go to the next one. One more. Thank you. Okay, so this first slide is a table of English language arts results. The table on the left is a set of averages, so from 2015 through 2019, so that's 4 years of state assessment results averaged for each of our schools. You had been curious in previous presentations about what did it look like before for us, and then what did last spring look like. So these are just kind of hard numbers showing you the percentage of students that met level 3 or 4 on that particular test. And then what the far right column, of course, shows you the change. You have that by school. Of course, for any school, we have it disaggregated in any number of ways. But again, in an effort to save some time, I did take those bits out. Let's go to the next slide. Here's a look across grade levels. So what I did here is wanted to show you, I know this is a little bit confusing to look at, but if you take it to look at the any grouping of 4, The left two bars show our district, so the solid green is our district average from 2015 through 2019, and then the green diagonal lines is the state from 2015. So you can see where we were relative to the state in those two, and then the next two that are red, solid red, is us last spring, diagonal red is the state last spring. So just again trying to show you across the state and across our entire grade, tested grades, kind of how we were doing. There's some interesting things here, I think, as you start getting into middle school, you start seeing us kind of shortening the gap in terms of comparison to state. And in this case, at the 11th grade, we're actually exceeding the state in terms of students who are proficient. And by the way, on the state test, I know last time I talked to you, I gave you a little background on what each of the tests is measuring. The state test is criterion reference, so it's aligned to the Common Core standards, and it's designed to tell us the extent to which students are meeting grade level proficiency standards. So that's what it's trying to tell us. Go ahead and go to the next one, Sandy. And then here, again, English language arts across all grade levels, but breaking it down in terms of student demographics. I think there's some interesting things here as well. You see very similar patterns as you look at these groupings, the two on the left and then the two green and then the two red, in terms of the consistent levels of impact in terms of the pandemic, and a lot of districts have been very curious about what that looks like. When I look at African American students here, I see that they shorten the gap with the state. And if you look at kind of closer to the right-hand edge, if you compare students who are underserved, traditionally underserved, versus those who are not, I think when you look at us, not comparing to the state, but looking at us across that span, you see some percentage points of decrease or shrinking the achievement gap. So I think there's a lot of interpretation you can do here, but I see some good news in ELA in terms of us shrinking the gap at least a little bit, which is a good thing to see. Let's go ahead and go to the next one, Sandy. So then shifting gears over to math, again, same format for you, but now we're looking at math results. We're on the left, 4 years of summarized or averaged information, and then last spring on the right. So you can see, again, pretty significant impact for all districts, including us, in both of these content areas, but perhaps a little bit more so in math. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. Again, here's that grade level look for you. And again, this looks kind of similar to me to ELA when I look at elementary and then the transition to middle, and I see a little bit of closure compared to the state. When we get to the middle grades, you can see at the 8th grade level, we actually are exceeding, our 8th graders are exceeding the state group of 8th graders, and then we're very close at 11th grade. So again, I think there's some good news there in terms of the work that's going on. Next slide, Sandy. When we look at math by groups, again, a lot of impact in terms of the pandemic. If you look at the distances on those bars, you can see a lot of consistency. There are some groups, for example, the Hispanic group, I think is a space where our Hispanic students lost a little ground compared to the state as we went across the pandemic. When I look at the underserved and not underserved groups, I think I interpret a bit of an increase in the achievement gap there. If you look prior to the pandemic, you can see underserved students were, underserved students were 20, they were about half as likely as not underserved students. And then if you look at last spring, you see that number reduces a bit, so they were about a third as likely. So you could interpret that as a bit of an increase in the achievement gap when you look at those groups. So that's just something to be aware of. Again, it's going to be a really interesting couple of years for us here. We're implementing a new ELA curriculum. We're implementing restorative practices. There's a lot of pedagogical support that's coming along in ELA as well. So that with large-scale summative tests, sometimes that doesn't play out right away. It's just a consistent effort that's going to have to be made. But those are those are some of the ways I look at these data to see trend lines over time, and are we shrinking, are we increasing, and so on. This is a math adoption year, so it'll be the same thing with math for the next couple of years, implementing new tools, following that up with pedagogical support as well. Let's go ahead and go to the next one. We often get questions about, how are we doing compared to others, so I just wanted to show you really quickly. This is all students, all grades, but just how we're doing in ELA compared to both the state on the far left and then other East County districts. So again, you can see very consistent impact of the pandemic, and you can see that compared to our neighbors, we're kind of hanging right in there and doing well. I know that if we called any of our neighbors and asked them if they're happy about the numbers, we would all uniformly say no. But we know that we're not alone in this, and we're focused in the right ways to move things forward. Let's go to the next one. Same with math, very similar, consistent impact across the board there. And then I did want to give you, go ahead and go to the next one. I wanted to give you just one look at science. This is kind of an interesting thing. The state science test is still relatively new compared to the ELA and math test. This test is aligned to the next generation science standards, which is a different set of standards. On the far left, you can see grades 5, 8, and high school, the state for 2018-19, and then the next set over is us for 2018-19. So you can just kind of quickly see we were, a little bit lower than the state in 5th and 8th grade, but then in 11th grade, we are exceeding the state prior to the pandemic. That's just 1 year. That's not averaged information. And then the next two groups over to the right, you can see last year for the state and then how we did in 21-22. So, a bit of a drop off for 5th grade, a little bit more consistency for 8th, and we continue to exceed state averages at 11th grade in terms of science. And if you're interested later, you can also look at this through the lens of the students who are in a 5th grade bar. In the next set of bars, they are the 8th graders. And the 8th graders in one set of bars are the 11th graders in the next. So you can also, you can get a little bit of a longitudinal look here, although there are kids that move out and move in. And so it's mostly the same kids, but not exactly. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I'll pause just for a moment. I know I went through all that really quickly, but I'll pause just for a second and see if you have any thoughts or questions on that. And then I just have one slide on report cards for next week.
Just a comment, because I've gotten into Lincoln Park helping a little bit with intervention and testing a couple of kids. And these are 5th graders. And what I've noticed with the few I've tested so far and worked with is in 3rd grade, they teach multiplication and division now. Well, used to be, when my kids, it was 5th grade, but now it's 3rd. Those kids that are 5th graders did CDL in 3rd grade. And I've run into kids that kind of understand what multiplication is, but when I talk division, they didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
So it was like that CDL year when it was really important, they lost it and stuff.
Yeah. I think when we look at those patterns and we see, for the most part, a fair amount of consistency in looking at the pre and then last spring, the dips are pretty consistent. Those are the sorts of things that contribute to that dip. And we all know as educators that this coming out of the pandemic, it's going to take, several years probably to kind of get back to where we were. But we've got the right people and we've got the right resources. So I know we'll get there.
I have a question. So in most of the state, both math and ELA, Cherry Park has stayed relatively strong. So I'm wondering, the denominator, is there an income difference of that specific elementary school, or geographic, racial, or anything a difference that could, or is it just staffing or something different? Because both before and now, after, during the pandemic, now that we're in person, they've stayed relatively stronger in numbers compared to other elementary schools.
Yeah, that's a great question. And when we've presented this information to our administrative team and had conversations, that's a noticing that they have as well. And so we'd been talking about, what are some ways that we can get in and understand at a deeper level the things that are going on at Cherry Park. I don't have specific information for you about if they're demographically, significantly different than other schools. Maybe my colleagues know that off the top of their head. I'll have to go take a look at that. But I know we're very interested in working with Matt and his team and figuring out ways to learn a little bit about how they're doing.
Well, I can tell you because I did the kids fund, we looked at free and reduced lunch, and this was before we had all the free lunch. And Cherry Park was the one school that had a real drop in the amount of kids who qualified for free and reduced lunch compared to a lot of our other schools, and this was pre-COVID.
Yeah, I think there's many factors. I think that is true around our free and reduced lunch numbers. They dropped. I also think that it is a veteran staff. You met one of them this evening, Stephanie. Myri is a teacher there. So there's a lot of conversations about that veteran staff and just the number of years. Also, the previous principal that was there for a number of years. And the reality of consistency and leadership and that vision and, the conversations around that. Again, lots of research around that. The next principal obviously is new now, but he was in that building, has that same passion, that same vision, and he's holding true with a lot of those things. I can tell you specifically years ago when this data came out, the outlier was Cherry Park. I went and met with that previous principal, which, by the way, was state principal of the year at the elementary school through her career. So, just pieces like that. But I asked her what the difference was, and she specifically talked systems. Just true systems, fidelity to the systems, and her having a fingerprint on every one of those systems to make sure that we're holding true. So those are some of the conversations that we're having at the other elementaries. You flagging that, just like Derek said, it's flagged, and we're having those conversations as well.
Yeah, and I think, obviously I knew it wasn't just going to be one factor, magical ingredient or something, but I was just curious because it seemed like there was definitely a difference comparatively. And I had an inkling about income because, I feel like a lot of students who are, have families who are able to support and other, outside of school, do better or have access. But also there's, so many things in, the background around, the leadership and the staff who have been there, who are supportive, because, that's a huge part of it, being able to build those relationships within the school community obviously makes students feel more comfortable, you don't have to learn things. So I just appreciate the context.
I would also point out that I think when Florence shared with us some data recently on the Fidelity inventory, Cherry Park was the only school also that met the 80% threshold. I'm very interested in looking at Cherry Park as those interruptible patterns or those reproducible patterns, and looking at what are those things that we can maybe think about in terms of budget, in terms of board role. I think that there's the opportunity there for us to really look at our best performers to see what can we learn from this from a board perspective. What can this data show us in terms of if there's things that are qualitative, we can still try to parse them out and find ways to maybe elevate those for our own learning. Does that make sense? Because Cherry Park, it's no matter what metric you show us, they decrease the least pre and post COVID, and it's every indicator is consistently better.
Definitely a learning, and what could we learn from that and maybe replicate in different schools for sure.
Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. This is the last slide. I just wanted to take a moment to share a little bit about report cards. I think most folks are very familiar with the school report card system. It's a requirement in both federal and state law that those are produced at the state level. When those come out next week, you'll see information about ELA and math achievement and growth. They are measuring growth a little differently. If I'd had more time tonight, I wanted to explain that a little bit, but it's not terribly important. Just know that it looks a little different. We'll also see some information about how our English learners are doing in terms of their progress, attendance information at the high school level. You get some 9th grade on track and some graduation data as well, and participation on state tests. They're using a 5-level rating system. So what that means is for those categories, ELA, achievement growth, math, achievement growth, and so on and so forth, by student group, the state ranks us levels 1 through 5. And the simplest way to explain that is level 1 is the 10th percentile, level 5 is the 90th percentile, level 3 is the median, and then they split the difference on level 4 and 2. So if you have any group of students who has 3 or more level 1s, in any one group of students has 3 or more, then you're likely to be identified for additional support, which comes in a variety of different ways. So the state originally was going to release those report cards today, and it got bumped a week to next Thursday, as I have on the slide there. And part of that was because they're still trying to sort out what they're going to do with schools that they believe are going to be identified. I did want to mention, prior to the pandemic, we had 3 schools that were in some kind of an improvement status. So those schools are still what they're referring to as under review. So we're not sure at this point those schools could stay in improvement. They could be exited from improvement, or they could be moved into a more significant version of improvement that has a little bit more oversight from the state. So we're not sure about that. So we're waiting to see what happens to those schools, and then we have some other schools that are likely to be identified for improvement status as well. I can't share those with you tonight because it's embargoed until next week. So we'll figure out a way to get that information to you, but next Thursday that will all be public information. So.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Okay.
And just to follow up, because you asked on if you don't mind, just real quickly, I know I think we're running behind, but our understanding, just to clarify and make sure we're all on the same page, that we would provide monthly data for those type of data that is easy. We can just push report, print, like hopefully discipline, we can just push print, and attendance, I know we can, so those type of things. And then getting deeper will be quarterly, so those quarterly reports. So this necessarily wasn't about data, this was about the report cards and about our state assessment, making sure that we provided it and went to a deeper level. So that's I just want to make sure that that's where that is and that's where it lives. So I think the calendar that Derek has, and we can highlight and make sure it all lines up now, is he presented kind of the month right for data, is we can look at what we can give monthly, which he provided some data for review, and then on top of that we'll do the quarterly where we go deeper, and then my understanding is that the workshops as well will be an opportunity for the board to really digest and dissect. Now with all that said, if any of that doesn't line up with kind of our understanding, then we'll pivot whichever direction you want and however you want, but that's kind of the direction we're going. Am I saying that right, Derek? Did that resonate with what you're thinking as well?
Yeah, in addition to monthly and quarterly, there were some annual, actually this one kind of fell under that category of once a year. Youth Truth, there are a few that we would give you, a 15-20 minute presentation in addition to sending you probably a written report of some kind that you could spend more time with if you needed to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, and now we will have our bond update. Pat.
I'll try to be really quick because I think most of you already know most of this. Yay, we have the measure on the ballot, 26227. Woo! We have our Right Public Affairs is working on a bunch of materials, and you've probably seen most of those out. You'll see some poster size, maybe 2 foot by 3 foot, going into the schools for each school identified projects. And then you'll also see a ginormous banner that's about 4 feet by 8 feet popping up around the district. So thank you to our maintenance team that's putting those up rapidly. And we do have other materials that are going out in mailers and whatnot. And then Ken is busily going to different meetings and groups and doing a little stumping for the bond.
I think there's a lot more we could share as well, from just very passive materials on every front office you can go into, to more interactive, to any time we have community coming in. We talked about it just a minute ago, coming into our schools, into our community. We're having board members there, obviously, whenever available, along with staff. So it's kind of the whole spectrum. I happen to get the privilege of driving around our district every day quite a bit. I'm seeing quite a few lawn signs out there that some magic elves put up. So yeah, so there's obviously those are out as well, I've seen. So we continue to have our weekly meetings. So the leadership team, Stephanie and Frida are on as an alternate. We're meeting weekly on those to continue to update. And then there's also a communication plan as well that's going out using Parent Square, using social media. So each week there'll be a basically weekly communication trying to promote, timing it when ballots go out, etc. So anyway. And I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to add anything specifically, or Frida?
Anything that is non-persuasive? Okay. Well, I will say that we have lots of folks who are out in the district as volunteers who are knocking on doors and talking about it just so that our community is aware. So we're doing that. And it's been really interesting to talk to folks, and also just great to get a read on how people feel about Douglas and, you know, challenges that they're having. A lot of it is neighborhood livability, but a lot of, you know, really excited that kids are back in school and things seem to be going well this year. And so it's a great opportunity to not just talk about the bond, but also just touch base with families. Yeah. Okay. That's all.
Okay, thank you. We did not have public comment tonight, so we do not have reflections on public comment. I don't know if there are any board members who want to say a brief word about what's happening in your schools or committees.
Everybody else reported last month about open houses. I had mine all this past month. So I was at Lincoln Park's open house, which was kind of interesting. I thought, well, no one's going to come in the library and talk to us. They're eating spaghetti. But they had a little thing that they had to get signed off to go into a raffle. So, boy, did I have the kids and parents come through there. So that went very successful. I was at Alice Hot open house as well. Of course, not as many people. Parents kind of drop off at that middle school level. And then I joined Donna at the high school with the foundation, and we kind of tag teamed, the three of us, foundation was pushing our scholarships at the high school especially, and we kind of covered the table. Bev would shift them over to us after talking about scholarships, so we kind of tag teamed there and whatnot. I also, last night, was at Alice Ott conferences, which was interesting. They were doing arena style again, but it sure didn't look like the last time we did arena style at the high school because there's so many more. But and then I got back. I am very pleased to say that the schools are letting volunteers in again, and so I was able to get back into Lincoln Park. I found out Alice Hott's never had anyone offer to help every week, so it's. You know, middle schoolers, people don't do that, you know, but I'm an on-call person there. So when they have, well, it's really sad because I used to do it every week at Gilbert Heights before COVID. And you go to check in, you check in on the computer, and there's a long list of volunteers. At Lincoln Park, there's 2 of us. You know, it's just slow moving, and Alice Hott didn't have any because I did pictures for him and stuff. So those kind of things. A couple of things outside that I think you'd want to know about. As I was mentioning earlier, problem solvers. There was problem solvers the city mayor's office doing, and it's to elevate issues in the area that first started in the business districts. It was just in Gateway, and that's why I was involved. Now they're spreading it throughout the city. Our district is going to be divided in 2 pieces. We have from Halsey to just past Division, and then from Division out, so through the Lentz. So we'll be picking up a little of PPS, a Lentz area in that group, but it helps elevate. That's why when Aaron mentioned a problem there, I have a place to elevate things to. In contacts, and that's what I was talking earlier about, getting help pushing permits through if we need to with the Elks property. The other one is kind of exciting, and I don't know how many of you know about the Portland Clean Energy Fund. It's a significant amount of money that's been collected, and the way they've done it is through grants, and it was mainly to nonprofit organizations, and a certain amount is supposed to be spent in East Portland to do energy efficient things. Well, the City Council will be voting on the 19th to change some of the rules, and because there's a huge amount of money and it's just not getting out. And the good part, of course, it perked my ears up, I'm all for it, is they will allow schools to apply for grant funding for energy efficient projects. And we're not talking small dollars here. You can get grants up to a few $1 million. So, but they do have to be energy efficient, related to improving the environment and stuff. But I thought I'd give you a heads up because that's something new that's not even going to come to City Council till the 19th. So, but it could be a real benefit because we got two things. We're a school district, but we're also in East Portland where they want more money spent. So.
Great, thank you, Frida. Anybody else want to? Go ahead, Gabrielle.
Yeah, I had something. Well, I just small update. Well, I had the pleasure of going to South Powellhurst this week and got to meet all the wonderful staff there and some of our CTP students. So it was wonderful. Got to go see them making like the little dog biscuits and the cloth closet. So it was really cool. So I just wanted to shout them out because they were so wonderful, and obviously that those things are available to anyone in the district, like the clothes closet. So any student could go in there. They had like backpacks, now they're getting out jackets and stuff like that. So definitely wanted to shout them out. And the other thing was, it is Indigenous Peoples Month, and sometimes it feels like an acknowledgement is good, but there, usually is something else that an action, just so that it doesn't feel so performative. But something that I wanted to shout out or just highlight because it's in conversations, and it's kind of long in the future, but I want to start getting people to think about the legislative season. It's coming kind of fast. And one of the things that they're talking about is implementing a bill that would support certification of Indigenous language interpreters, which right now there isn't that many, specifically, I think the bill talks about Guatemala and Mexico, which are very linguistically diverse countries. And so that was one of the ways so that folks could get certified and paid to translate, because it's not very common, and not everybody who is Latinx or is Indigenous to like Latin America speaks Spanish. That's a very misconception. So I think it's a good bridge between both months, and you just wanted to put that on the radar of our district, but also folks who would be interested in, maybe supporting that legislative down the line.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say quickly that I did very much enjoy going with Mr. Richardson to the student council and getting to talk with them about the bond, and just really proud of our students, that our student council is such a diverse group of energetic, engaged young people who are very much aware of and caring about their school and their district, and willing to step into that space of doing something of meaning. And I think we're really encouraged about being asked to, or invited to participate. So I really did enjoy that. Also, I think that there is tomorrow the El Carnaval de Barrio at Ron Russell Middle School. So just putting that out there, if anybody wants to show up for that at 5:30. Anything? Okay, so then our financial report. You have been the lady of the hours.
I know, and you got this one really late. Sorry about that. I'm just going to try to keep it to a few key points because you can read it in full, and then if you have any questions or want more updates, you can contact me afterwards. So PERS rates, those valuations came out and they set rates for the 23-25 biennium. And I wanted to give you some context there so you can see how much those have bounced around, and obviously they affected the budget pretty significantly there in 17-19. And then again in 19-21, they went down. 21-23, you're going to see them pop back up for the 23-25, but definitely not as much as we've experienced. So we're excited because if you recall a couple years ago when we were talking, we were saying at least 3 percentage points per biennium increases. So they had some pretty good investment years. We'll see how that plays out once we get to 25-27. So the biggest thing I want to bring to your attention is the general fund. And so you'll see a little table there in the middle that actually should be familiar if you remember my exciting and engaging budget committee presentation. And so talking about deficit spending, and so you'll see there that the projected resources for this year, 139.2 million. Of that, 23.2 was projected to be our beginning fund balance. And just a reminder, we came in a little bit under at 22.6. But you can see that our actual requirements, 139.2 less contingency, 132. So we're 16 million in deficit there from what we get to what we spend, right? And we've always underspent our budget or held positions back. This year is really not too much different other than you'll see there we have about 136 FTE. When I pulled the data at the end of the month that were vacant. So we have a lot of turnover, a lot of staffing fluctuations. So what does this mean? So you'll notice on the financial report that the projected ending fund balance for this year is 12.2. That's a pretty significant difference, $10 million. So what does that mean? That means that our ending fund balance, if it doesn't go up, we'll be looking at reducing programming for the next year. We probably will also need to reduce programming just for the simple fact that, as we've seen from year to year, we've had declining enrollment. You'll see that October to October, from last October to this October, there hasn't been a huge fluctuation. So that's good news, but it is down a little bit. We traditionally go down between October to May. So we do anticipate that we will continue to see a decline in enrollment. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. We weren't caught off guard. And I don't think there's really that much left to note in there for the rest of the report, and it's very late. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to read it later and ask me lots of questions later. Unless you have something specific right now. No?
Okay. Did you have a question?
Just when you're talking programming cuts, are we talking about potential layoffs in the future, or what's? Yeah. And then I guess it's something I'm also concerned about is my kids are able to take music lessons this year at Floyd, and it's been amazing. And I know that's something we protected over the years through different deficits and the like, is that specific type of program. I'm a little concerned that we'll lose the stuff that makes us the secret sauce, so to speak. It kind of makes us shine.
Yeah, so to be clear, at this point, we have had zero conversations about reductions. We have zero, as a leadership team, we have zero conversations about reductions, other than the reality is that we've been deficit spending. We know we've been deficit spending. This is 2 months in, what we're projected to be at the end of the year. Could that change? Could it get better? A little bit, right? Enough? I don't know. Could it get worse? It's really right now is just tracking. So I just want to be very clear that no one's talking about any programs or any support, but ultimately if we have a budget that says we need this much to deliver the program we have, and we're only getting this much from the state, you know, there's a difference there. We got to figure that out. So what that process looks like will be, you know, when we get to the point where that's real and that's tangible, you know, from community meetings, conversations with the board, what do we prioritize? How do we use an equity lens? How do we navigate that together? Well, it will be roll up your sleeve hard work is what it will be. Yeah, and unfortunately, we've been through it before. We've had significant reductions. We've cut programming. I mean, we've done that before, and it's not fun. It's not healthy. We know what's in the general fund is serving kids, is supporting kids, one way or the other. So when you start picking that apart, it hurts.
Normally, don't we get the enrollment report this month?
Yeah.
But next month. I just could you let me know, could you take a look at West Powhurst and the difference? Because they opened up that big affordable complex in West Powhurst and it had quite a few family units. I was just curious if it stayed flat or whatever. Because we have another one being built right now for Mill Park, and it's even bigger with a lot more family units. So kind of watching that for the enrollment in those particular schools.
Yeah, so the update email I sent the board kind of showed universal, didn't show by school, but we can definitely get that to you and will in the November report. But also on top of that, you'll note that elementary is up. It's the area that is up in enrollment in our district specifically. Middle school's pretty flat, and then high school's down a little bit, but elementary's up. So that could be good news for the future, could be good news for the trend line, which has been in a free fall, for lack of a better term. I'm not being dramatic there. Our enrollment's been in a free fall. Maybe it's starting to level a little bit. Maybe it's starting to trend line will go the other way. At least leveling would be a good thing. And then if our elementary holds true and that starts going back through our middle school and high school, we'll see some growth there.
Yeah, it's just that I know there's about 5 complexes in some stage, building or permitting or whatever, all in our district, and they're all affordable. So I'm just kind of curious of following, is it going to increase our enrollment or does it have no effect because kids just are shifting around?
It does have an impact. It will have an impact, does have an impact. And we've seen some growth at West. I don't know if we can attribute it all to that, but we can get you the specific numbers. So how much, anyway, we can get you the numbers. Yeah.
Did you say the elementary is actually grown this year?
Yeah. Yes, our elementary enrollment's up.
Wow.
Right now.
Okay, I just wanted to flag that because that's good news.
Mm-hmm.
First time in a while, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Stephanie?
Just the federal package that was just announced this week that's going to states. I think it could be around safety or guns. I can't remember, but I think there may be some funds coming through ODE. And I just wondered if later we can get a announcement on that. Not today, or is that in your superintendent's? Okay, but you know which one I'm talking about? Okay. I can't remember the name of it. I saw the 2-pager. I retained nothing at 10:15.
Is there any more comments or questions? Thank you. Thank you, Pat. And so, Ken, you gotta close us off. Thank you.
No, thank you. And we are late. So once again, I will be brief and I'll try to be brief. And I would just say, no superintendent's report, but these are things I do think is important for the board to hear. Just kind of obviously there are some things that we're very proud of. So I'll name one thing we're very proud of. One is our elementary class size average across the district is about between 23 and 24. And I am very proud of that. There's been times in this district where we were above 30 in every classroom, and kindergarten 35. I mean, when you see that in the hallway. So that's been some intentional work, some intentional focus. Obviously, we heard about SIA, some investments we've done around SIA that's really helped us in that. And when we did our original SIA communication, class size did matter, and it was spoken highly from our parents and families. So anyway, I just wanted to share that SIA is making a difference at the elementary school, and that class size is making a difference. So that's good. Also wanted to throw out there another positive. This is just a nugget for you. Is, again, I already explained all this, but one of the things I'll read here, there's some patterns that I heard from our principals and our directors on these tables. One pattern: we are all valuing time with all staff, all bold, all caps, on late start Wednesdays. Our collaboration and unity is very high now that we get to have license and classified to attend our late start. So again, just some intentional work through cabinet and others to ensure that our classified are coming to our late start with our license. It's noticed, it's having an impact, not to mention our mentor programming for our classified. Huge difference, and I think improvement in our district. So just a little piece there, very excited about. Want to share that definitely starting hearing more from our administrators elementary level about high needs behaviors, about students that have had trauma, and we're talking behaviors that just even hard to communicate with. I'm sure there'll be more in-depth reports later from Michael around that. He's been at the point at that. And what the pattern we're seeing, not universal, but the pattern we're seeing is there are new families and new students in our district, more of them. So it's kind of a surprise too. It's like, oh, here they are, and they aren't identified. Sometimes they haven't been in school at all, like third grader, never been in school. So those type of things is definitely felt at our schools and something that our community is talking about. So I wanted the board aware of that as well, because that is real. Also, I do want to recognize, we talk about all those open positions, but that is not only hitting our schools, which is real and important, and we need to understand it, but our district office, Pat's department, is getting borderline decimated with the openings she has and trying to find people that are interested. Actually, in this report specifically, I can go back and read Brooks. One of the things Brooke talked about is losing quality people and people that have asked for letters of recommendation over the last week. So just the reality, it is having an impact. I'm not trying to make an excuse. I want the board aware of it, and we're trying to navigate it. What it looks like in our buildings is our highest needs, specifically with our teachers. Most of our teaching positions are filled, but when you talk about our case managers, student services, special education, school psychs, some of those positions, we even added our last budget. Some of those literally have had no applicant kind of thing. So that is real, something we're still navigating. And on top of that, our sub pool, we're starting to feel it. I mean, you can imagine the reality of September. Now we're in October. I have a report here, and for brevity tonight, I won't go through it, but ultimately on this report, you'll see that we're down in the 40% fill rate. We're down in 50% fill rate on some days, not every day. And remember, 50% fill rate, that's not 50% of teachers, that's 50% that are calling out. So if we have 6 call out, we only have 3 filling, so 3. So we're not in the, oh my gosh, but 3 teachers gone or taking 3 other people to fill and cover, that is real. We've developed a plan, actually through Andy's leadership and many at this table, around developing a sub kind of process, how we support if we have gaps, which includes all of us at the table going and subbing if needed. So that's going to be kind of the next steps as we play out. Conversations now, it's real. My worry and fear, to be transparent, is it could get worse. It could get significantly worse. We have a flu season that could hit us. We have COVID waves that could hit us. I mean, we could be back in the position where, is it safe to open a school or run a school because of lack of staffing? Nowhere near that yet, but that could be a real conversation. So just as we move forward. Another another bump we're still navigating. It's so much better. Our transportation department's just been doing an amazing job with staffing and with being responsive, but we have gotten some feedback. Again, I'm just pulling some themes out of here. A few of our elementary schools where buses are late, and just the impacts of that lateness when we have kids, and how do we get them on buses, and they're 15, 20 minutes late, how we navigate that. So again, something you might hear in the community, definitely trying to be responsive, fix it, looking at how we might split routes, make some changes. There's plans in place, but that is a real challenge that we're dealing with right now as well. Also, you've seen some emails, I know specifically the board, but safe streets and looking at our schools. A lot of our schools have encampments across the street, right next door. That's real as well. We continue to try to communicate with our city, We try to use the tools available, but we have had, again, if I read through this and went through some of the themes, that's what you'd hear. You'd hear a theme when under the concerns blanket, you'd hear that theme. So those are a few different things, just kind of themes going on the prepared. Again, this report isn't, I can talk about all the amazing things too, but these are kind of the flags I want to make sure you're aware of as we go forward. One other things want to make sure the board's aware of, and we'll follow up with this. We did receive an official complaint. I shared that information with the whole board a while back. That we went through that process. That complaint now was not happy with the response. So in our policy, that now goes to the board as an appeal. So it's been appealed officially to the board. I've shared that information, the entire packet. Actually, Lori sent it to board chair and vice chair. They have it, and it will now go out to the entire board to talk about when do we process that, what does that look like, and our next steps. That could include our workshop, maybe carving some time out, could include our next board meeting, could include a special board meeting. I'll leave that to the discretion, obviously, of our board leadership, but we'll navigate it together and help in any way we can. So just wanted to make sure you were aware that's coming. Couple of the things, just clearly, I talked about the increase in our looking at the possibility of an improvement, or not improvement, increasing preschool at every single elementary school. We're still tracking. I'm going to follow up with this and send it to you in writing, because I wanted to go through some of this, but I think tonight, for brevity, I'll just send it to you. But the reality is the excitement of, we do see a pathway of possibly having preschool in every single one of our elementary schools as near as next year. So we'll see how that all plays out. Sorry, you good? Okay. And then finally, a fun one, a positive one here, and then I'll end on one last positive. So Congressman Blumenauer's office has reached out to us and requested to visit our high school to listen, talk about learning loss, what's happening. So that's going to be happening on Tuesday, October 18th. I'll some information about that as well. Board members will be invited. I'm just flagging it here for you. The setup is 2 hours, and ultimately what it's going to look like is meeting with the administrative team, meeting with staff, meeting with students, and that's kind of the process during that 2 hours. So we're excited about that and to host him in the process. And the last one for fun, just because, again, themes. We had so many great things the last few weeks. In addition to open house, community events, we started our garden classes with Grow Portland. We had our first PBIS assembly. We had Spirit Day of the fifth year, or of Spirit Day of the year. Fifth grade went to Zinger Farm and finished our Dibbles, and we finished our Dibbles testing and reviewing data and making plans for supporting students needing additional. Through our partnership with Oregon Ballet Theater, we're kind of doing some things. So my point is I wanted to make sure you heard the concerns, but I'll make sure to get some in writing to you about some of the positives, because a lot of themes around the positive and just reopening. You heard the high school, right? 2,600 students going into an assembly. If you have not come one of these days, you'll have to come to the assembly, because it is something to see. So that is it for my report this evening, and thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Richardson. If there is nothing else, hearts, minds cleared. All right, we are adjourned.
Anything happen with Sandy, with the sports?
So specifically, we did our community meetings, and we met with all three of them, and they determined.
Did the other two